Purchase Treaty of 1790, and we, as beneficiaries of the treaty, must recognize our responsibilities, including our collective responsibilities to the land and water. Mr. Mayor, we have no supplementary agenda this evening. I will now go over the rules for the council chambers. The municipality of Chatham-Kent supports open meetings that welcome debate of public policy issues in an atmosphere of inclusiveness, integrity, civility, fairness, and respect for differing points of view. Anyone conducting themselves in a way that disrupts or impedes the orderly conduct of the meeting, interrupts or makes derogatory statements or hate or defamatory comments about councillors, staff, speakers, or fellow members of the public may result in removal from the premises. We ask that you do not approach any members of council if they are seated in their council seats around the horseshoe. The use of posters, signage, and literature is also prohibited. Mr. Mayor, we have no disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening.
Okay, we'll move on to recognition.
Our first recognition is the recognition of the installment of George Osei. I hope I'm saying that correctly. And Councillor Brock McGregor is going to come up and do the introduction.
Here we go. It's my great pleasure to recognize George Osei and his family. It was just a month ago, May 25th, that we had many members of the Ghanaian community across North America, individuals from Ghana that made the trip here to celebrate George's installment as the Adabubu Ambassadorial Chief here in Canada. It was a really fantastic event, and it was really a great honor to have the municipality involved as well. Really want to thank George and his family for bringing that event to Chatham-Kent, and really would like to recognize him and his family for all they do for this community and the Ghanaian community throughout North America. Thank you.
Thank you, Chatham. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor McGregor. I am overwhelmed and touched. This is my home, and I'll try to bring unity and lead the sister cities together so that whenever we meet as colleagues, we can have fun, we can talk about development, and we can talk about unity in our life. Thank you very much for this recognition. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Next, we have the recognition of the Accessibility Advisory Committee Award winners, and I believe Councillor Story is going to do the honors.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to welcome everyone and thank you for coming tonight for the Accessibility Committee Awards. It's a really important set of recognitions for community members who are doing great work in making our community more accessible and inclusive to all. Thank you to Mr. Mayor for your support of our committee. Our Community is truly enriched by the contributions of persons with disabilities to Chatham-Kent, because our entire community is really strengthened when everyone is included. And I wanted to thank the members of the Accessibility Advisory Committee who are here tonight. Thank you all for your hard work. This past year especially, we've really put you to work asking for your feedback on a variety of projects and proposals, especially the downtown proposal. And so really appreciate the extra time you have taken to provide your feedback on that. And I would just reinforce the importance of listening to those with disability and the importance of universal design, no matter your age, your disability, or other factors. Making sure that our community is welcoming and accessible to all truly benefits all of us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask my very helpful fellow committee person, Claire Latimer, who's going to play a video of each award winner. That I'm going to introduce the award winner, and then we'll go on to the next one. So thank you, Claire, for your technical assistance. Yes, please. I'm not sure where to stand.
16-year-old UCC student, and I'm a patient advisor at the Chatham-Kent Health Alliance. Accessibility can have a lot of different definitions, but to me I think it means that each facility that a person uses day to day shouldn't stand in the way of the person's experience because of their disabilities or differences. And even in social situations, accessibility should be something that people are taught about so that no person or place stands in the way of someone's experiences, regardless of their differences. For the first time ever, next year I will be running UCC's second ever Disability Day completely by myself. So I think that that will make an impression on them, and that maybe we could get some more definite changes a little bit faster on inclusion.
So this award is presented to Abigail McFadden, who we just saw on the screen. We just have right here in the council chambers, and we'll have all of you come up together when we're done and then do a photo op, if that's okay with you. I just wanted to explain a little bit more. I'm sorry my back's to some of you, but we'll just explain this to everybody. Abigail McFadden of Chatham has won as the recognition of the Sheila Lindsay Powers Accessibility Advocate Award. And this award is presented to an individual who stands out in the community as an advocate for inclusion of people of all abilities. And you are doing amazing work on that, Abigail. Thank you. And thanks to your friends and family and coworkers who helped make that video. The award is named after the late Sheila Lindsay Powers, who was a participating member of our Accessibility Advisory Committee. Even though Sheila was deaf and a double amputee, confined to a power wheelchair, she still got around independently, driving in her van, sitting in her wheelchair. She demonstrated that people with limitations can be out and about, living their lives in our community. Reading lips was how she participated in CKAAC meetings. If some place wasn't accessible, she let them know. The Chatham-Kent Accessibility Advisory Committee truly benefited from her drive and input, and we're honored to present the Sheila Lindsay Powers Accessibility Advocate Award to Abigail McFadden. I'll give this to her now. Thank you very much. And then do you want to do a photo with us right now? Sure, sounds good. If you want to turn around, we'll just do that. If there anyone else wants to come up in our photo op here, it's everyone's welcome. Are we good? Okay. Thank you very much, Abigail. We've got 2 more videos and 2 more awards. Thank you, Claire. Yep.
My name is Shelby Dorothy Emery, and I'm so excited about the ward. I help out here at New Beginnings and at Come Together CK, and I love crafting. I make 3D hedgehogs out of rainbow loom bands. I make little dragonflies and all sorts of things you can imagine.
And what's your business called?
Oh, and my business is called Shelby's Creations.
Thank you. So the Sid Eber Perseverance Award, which is being awarded to Shelby Emery of Blenheim. This award is presented to an individual who stands out as a person who perseveres beyond their limitations to participate in community life. The award is named after the late Sid Eber, who was a participating member of the Chatham-Kent Accessibility Advisory Committee. Sid had limited use of his legs and arms and was confined to a power wheelchair that he maneuvered with a joystick. Sid and his wife, Sarah, who is the chair of our committee, who is a wonderful chair of the Accessibility Advisory Committee. Thank you, Sarah, for all your work. We worked as a team with her driving their van. Sid's limitations did not deter him from being out and about in the community, and we know that there's no limitations that are keeping you back either, Shelby. So thank you very much for your contributions to Chatham-Kent. And we will walk up and present you with the award too, if you're comfortable with that.
Willing attitude to learn, adjust, and make changes to support all members of our community as fairly as we can. As a team, we look at accessibility in a non-negotiable manner. We do everything we can within the store to be accessible for all customers and employees. We want everyone that comes through Mark and Sarah's No Frills to feel as they can maneuver the store without any barriers, whether those be physical, emotional, or social.
And our final award tonight is the Dr. Veronica Vaughn Most Accessible Business of the Year Award, presented to Mark and Sarah Popeil of No Frills in Wallaceburg. This award is presented to a business that stands out as providing an accessible facility and accessible customer service, which is so crucial to all of us just going about and doing our day-to-day lives. This award is named after the late Dr. Veronica Vaughn, who was a participating member of our committee, and even though she was confined to a wheelchair as a quadriplegic, she still found every way possible to access the businesses and services offered in our community. With the assistance of her family or PSW driving her van, she vacationed, dined, shopped, and participated in many other community activities. And when she was riding in the van, she sat in her wheelchair in the front passenger seat, not riding in the back like baggage, which was her words. If they came across some place that she couldn't access, they were sure to be informed of it, and the CK Accessibility Advisory Committee greatly benefited from Dr. Veronica Vaughn's inputs and assessments to eliminate barriers, and we're thrilled to have such great business owners like Mark and Sarah Popeil in Wallaceburg and the No Frills grocery store we had. I do have to say, reviewing the submissions for this award was really heartwarming, and just such a good news story to learn about so many people trying to make our community more inclusive and welcoming. So I always that just gets me right in the feels. So thank you all, and I want to invite Mark and Sarah Popeil up to receive their award from No Frills in Wallaceburg. And last but not least, I would love to have, if we could get one last photo op with all the award winners, and then we'll go on to the rest of our meeting. Mayor Kenneth, as the chair, are you okay with that?
I'm quite all right.
Okay.
Maybe invite any family members.
Yeah, for sure. If any family members or committee members want to join us for the photo, please do.
In this
Yes.
picture. So
Yes.
why don't all come up and let's celebrate.
Thank you so much. And counselors too.
Yes,
Anyone from the
counselors,
wards want to come on? Come on
let's
up.
make this All right, we'll go into item 12, planning.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. The process to be followed for each application will be as follows. 1, the clerk will announce each individual planning item. 2, the mayor will ask if there's anyone present other than the applicant with an interest in the application and to indicate so by raising their hand. 3, the clerk will advise if written or video submissions have been received. 4, if someone present other than the applicant indicates an interest in the item, there will be a presentation by administration. 5, individuals with an interest in the application other than the applicant will be asked to proceed to the podium, provide their name and address, and address council. 6, the applicant will be asked if they wish to proceed to the podium and address council. 7, administration will be asked if they have any comments based on the discussion that may have occurred. And 8, council will be asked what action it wishes to take with regard to the item. Notice, if any person or public body that files an appeal of the decision of council in respect of the proposed applications does not make oral or written submissions to the municipal clerk of the Corporation of Municipality Chatham-Kent before the proposal is approved, they are not entitled to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal if otherwise eligible, unless in the opinion of the tribunal there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as a party to the appeal. Information on council's actions tonight will be posted on the municipal website. All persons who have made a request or who have made a written or oral submission regarding a particular planning item will receive a notice of council's decision, including appeal procedures. Any other person who wishes to receive a notice of decision must submit a written request to the municipal clerk. Thank you.
12A, application for zoning bylaw amendment, Daniel and Elaine Foz, 150 Main Street West, community of Ridgetown. We received no notice of any deputations on this item.
Is there anyone present other than the applicant and or the agent with an interest in the application? If so, please indicate by raising your hand. Seeing none, can I get Councillor Wright and Councillor McDonald to move this, please?
I'll move that, Mayor Canna, thank you. There we go.
Happy to second.
Any questions? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
Council, you might have to put your votes in again. I think our voting system might be a little glitchy tonight. Councillor McGrail.
Yes.
Councillor Finn.
Yes.
And Councillor Allen.
Yes.
Oh. Yeah, I think we have to do it again. Sorry, guys. Okay, all votes are in. Motion passes 17-0. 12B, application for consent and zoning bylaw amendment, Stephen Iverson, 18 William Street and 7 Erie Street North, community of Merlin. We also received no notice of deputations on this item.
Is there anyone present other than the applicant and or their agent with an interest in the application? If so, please indicate by raising your hand. Seeing none, is there any questions? Oh. Sorry, question. Oh, so the applicant, so thank you. The applicant, would you like to say something? Sorry, could you raise your hand? No, okay. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote. Sorry, actually, Councillor Harrigan and Councillor Anderson, you put it on the floor, please.
I will move the recommendations. Thank you.
And I will second, thanks.
All right. With that, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor McGrail.
Yes.
Councillor Finn.
Yes.
And Councillor Allen.
Yes.
Okay. All votes are in. Motion passes 17-0. And we have 12C, application for zoning bylaw amendment 112863 153 Ontario Limited and Crazy Shed Company Limited, 115 Erie Street South. Mr. Mayor, we did have, I believe we have 4 deputations that we received in advance on this item.
Anthony, go ahead.
Thank you, Rick. If we just can get the slides up. Thank you. So the municipality has received an application for zoning bylaw amendment concerning property located at 115 Erie Street South in the community of Merlin. The property is located on the south end of Merlin, on the west side of Erie Street South. The property is approximately 7 acres in area. All of Merlin is designated secondary urban center in the Chatham-Kent official plan, and the subject property is zoned deferred development. Subject property was once part of a railway corridor, which is a use that lasted for about a century. In the mid-1990s, this use ceased, and the railway company began removing the rail line and these operations and divested the subject property. The applicant acquired the subject property at that time and has retained private ownership up until the day of this application. The applicant has entered into an agreement of purchase and sale for the subject property with Crazy Shed Company, which is a manufacturer of sheds, and the manufacturing company is actually local to the Merlin community, and it's located at 7 Hyde Street, which is just north of the subject property. The acquisition, or the proposed acquisition of these lands, is to support this manufacturing of sheds, this company's current operations, and it's primarily for the storage of portable sheds to await delivery to customers. So the zoning bylaw amendment application is to support this proposed use or this intent, but it's also to provide some flexibility into the future in terms of land uses for the subject property. In particular, the zoning amendment is proposing to permit future residential uses along the frontage of Erie Street South, and then to add some flexibility to the operations of the prospective purchaser of the lands as well. For some context, the secondary urban center policies of the official plan intend for the Merlin community to have a range of land uses, including commercial, residential, industrial, and institutional. And the key map in front of before council right now is just a demonstration of the existing zoning throughout the community, which consists of the purple areas, labeled RL1 or low density residential lots. The yellow areas towards the center of the mapping is for commercial land uses. The gray area is the existing industrial uses, and the subject property is obviously identified in the bold red. And it's just to demonstrate the proximity to this range of land uses, in particular the industrial lands to the north and directly to the east across from Erie Street South. So to be more specific, the zoning bylaw amendment is proposing to rezone the frontage along Erie Street South to a holding residential low density first zone. The holding provision is recommended, as these used to be industrial lands, so a change to a more sensitive use such as residential would require some environmental investigation to determine the appropriateness of the lands for the residential use. The balance of the lands, which is shaded in the grid area to the rear of this residential planned lands, would be proposed to be rezoned to general industrial, but with a site-specific zoning that would limit the uses or permitted uses to open storage, limited to the storage of portable buildings, a contractor's yard, and industrial use, limited to the manufacturing and component parts of assembly and portable buildings, which is specific to the use proposed by the prospective purchaser. Regulations in this proposed zoning would include a development setback of 75 meters within the grid area from the front lot line along Erie Street South, and also to allow open storage or the portable buildings to be placed on existing surfaces, which primarily consist of grass or gravel area. So the application has been reviewed in the context of the provincial policy statement and the Chatham-Kent official plan, and is in conformity with these land use policies, and as such is being recommended that zoning bylaw amendment application file D14 ME 2024-0 concerning lands known as 115 Erie Street South in part of Lot 10, registered compiled plan 775 in the community of Merlin, to A, rezone the frontage along Erie Street South to a depth of approximately 150 feet to a site-specific holding residential low-density first zone, to permit low-density residential uses once conditions related to the requirements of the Environmental Protection Act regarding a change to more sensitive use have been met, and it's supposed to be B, rezone the balances of subject lands to a site-specific general industrial zone, to limit permitted uses to the following: A contractor's yard, open storage limited to the storage of portable buildings, and industrial use limited to the manufacturing of component parts and assembly of portable buildings, and for which the following regulations apply: the front yard depth minimum of 75 meters, again measured from the front lot line along Erie Street South, and the open storage of portable buildings being exempt from section 4.25.2 open storage surface treatment of the zoning bylaw be approved and the implementing bylaw be adopted. Thank you.
Council, do you have any questions of administration regarding this report? Councillor Harrigan?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Kenneth. I do have questions just based on some of the deputations that we received. Thank you to the residents for submitting those. I have two. So my first question is regarding the specifications in one, I believe it should be B, with the uses permitted. If this
Sorry, Councillor Harrigan, we are going to have another opportunity if you ask questions regarding the deputations. We're going to have those up next. So if there's any report there, just to keep the order so everyone can hear what you're referring to, because anyone at home has not been able to read
my
it.
questions are specific to this. Would you like me to save all questions? I'm happy to do that as well.
No, if it's related to the report, go ahead.
Okay, so with the resale of this property in the future, if anybody were to use it for industrial purposes different than what's outlined in 1B, I believe it should say, and the open storage limited to the storage of portable buildings or industrial usage to the assembly of portable buildings, would they need to come back to council for further amendments to the zoning?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Yes, that's correct. The proposal is to limit the uses to these for the property, so anything outside of these uses obviously would have to come before council for further approval.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, now we have our deputations.
So our first deputation is Francis Reed, and up after that will be Nicholas Smith. Francis, do you want me to take that?
Yeah, if you would. Yeah.
Honorable Mayor Kniff, councilors and attendees. My name is Francis Reed. Leading into my retirement, I look forward to living in a quiet and beautiful small Ontario town. This was my dream. I thought I had found the perfect place when my family chose to make the municipality of Chatham-Kent our home 2 years ago. We live on the property bordering the 115 Erie Street South, which has been referred to as a brownfield site due to its previous use as a railroad corridor and the contaminants left in the soil. This is a brownfield site, and this is 115 Erie Street South and the abutting pond, also owned by the applicants. In early April 2024, without a bylaw zoning amendment change approval, the Crazy Shed Company Limited with the property owners, clear-cut a re-emerging woodlot and built a gravel road through the property near our home. This displaced birds and wildlife, and they began to store portable sheds on the property. They brought the sheds onto the property with a large tractor that shook our home. My son, a police officer, was unable to sleep during the day to prepare for night shifts, and I lost sleep due to the disruption of the peace and serenity we had previously enjoyed. I am thankful we built a fence around our property in advance of this unexpected development for the safety of our family and our pets. Upon requesting intervention from the city, we received no assistance. The cabins continued to move in and out. The loud, oversized trucks are moving at all hours, disturbing our peace and enjoyment of our property. They start as early as 6 a.m. and continue throughout the day as late as 9 p.m. They are moving on the weekends and even on the long weekend holidays. This clearly shows a lack of respect for neighboring properties and sets a concerning precedent for future disregard if the zoning bylaw is approved. There was no notice of bylaw zoning amendment throughout this period. The application was submitted on May 1st, 2024. The official notice was issued June 4th, 2024 by mail and formal signage posted by the city. No movement of cabins should have been permitted until the bylaw was completed through the proper process. Based on my 25 years' experience as a licensed condominium manager and having dealt with zoning bylaw issues, it confused me as to why this process was not followed. Why was the movement of the cabins not stopped? Why were the breach of bylaw zoning fines not applied to parties breaking the zoning bylaw for deferred development property? These questions remain unanswered. The introduction of industrial activities in our residential area has led to increased noise and dust pollution, negatively affecting our quality of life. We oppose the rezoning of this property because Crazy Shed Company's industrial operations involve heavy machinery that generates substantial construction noise with a significant amount of dust. These activities disrupt our residential neighborhood and pose health risks to residents, reducing the overall quality of life in our area. The pond in the green space at 115 Erie Street serves as a habitat for local wildlife, contributing to the biodiversity and the ecological health of the area. Rezoning the space for industrial use would lead to habitat destruction, severely impacting local fauna and diminishing the natural beauty within our community. In my retirement, I enjoy many creative pursuits, such as gardening, painting, and photography. The view from my home of many beautiful sunsets have given me inspiration for my paintings and photographs, but now that is destroyed. Children walking to the nearby Merlin area public school, 1 kilometer away, will face the safety challenge of large vehicles moving in and out from 115 Erie Street South. I have already witnessed drivers having difficulty backing their oversized loads out of the roadway to the street, causing potential safety risks for children and adults alike in the neighborhood. I spoke with a former MP and learned that federal funding is available to improve our community. I further researched, and there is provincial funding available through the Canada Community Building Fund that has funds for redevelopment. Applying for such funds could allow the property to be purchased by the town and transformed into a walking park. Areas requiring remediation could be cordoned off to support local wildlife while the soil heals. The remainder of the property could provide green space for walking and helping to improve the quality of life for residents. Historically, the volunteer fire department leased this property for 21 years, and in their private time volunteered to keep the property clean and maintained so the community could use it, including skating in the winter. Upon our arrival, my son and I helped with cleaning debris and cutting grass on the vacant property with the vacant property owner's approval. With a new housing development slated to commence in 2025, this land could serve the community well and provide another space for new residents to enjoy Merlin. Before a decision is made, it is important that a noise study, a dust study, a traffic study, and an environmental impact assessment be completed, given all of these impacts will happen if approval is granted. Once assessed, we should be given the opportunity to review this information. I therefore urge you to consider turning down the rezoning application and revisit in the future. Thank you.
Next, we have Nicholas Smith, then it'll be Garth Reed.
Okay, hello. My name's Nicola, and I live with my partner and his mother on the property bordering 115 Erie Street, just in Merlin. I'm speaking to you tonight to oppose the rezoning change of 115 Erie Street to industrial. A little bit about myself. I grew up in Guelph. I lived on a farm. My favorite memories as a youngster were the time I spent in nature, biking, hiking, and walking with my dogs. After high school, I moved to Toronto for post-secondary education, where one thing led to another, and I became a business owner with a company that employs just shy of 40 people. Toronto was good to me. I spent over 20 years there, but my desire to be with my partner, to start a family, and to be in a place that's more connected to nature brought me here, brought me to Merlin. The spring, summer, and fall on our property in Merlin is breathtaking. I love spending time in the garden with my partner, planting and improving our property. We chose to relocate and settle in Merlin because it's peaceful, the serene atmosphere, and we love the house that we live in. Unfortunately, in April, things started to take a change. What once were peaceful morning, quiet walks have become disrupted by trucks going in close proximity to our home, carrying large sheds that kick up dirt as they pass by. Our property is already adjacent to industrial area that generates loud noises that start as early as 6 a.m. and go as late as 9 p.m. That happens 6 days a week. It's even on long weekends. That's something that was taken into account when purchasing our home. We don't want additional noise beyond what we're already currently experiencing. Also, everyone in the immediate area is going to suffer financial implications as our property values will go down. Expanding industrial zoning in residential area detracts from the appeal of the area, discouraging potential residents from moving to it, negatively impacting our community's character and the potential for growth. Before increasing industrial zoning within a residential area, is it not only fair for the residents who live there to conduct proper studies, such as a dust study, a noise study, a traffic study, and an environmental assessment? There's already been a lot of activity on our neighboring property, which currently is only zoned for deferred development. The Crazy Shed company started operating as if the zoning had changed long before somebody even applied, and they continue to do so. Proper processes are in place to protect communities and to give people a voice, and those processes have not been followed. The reward for not complying with the law should not be granting them immediate approval. What message does that send to other people who don't comply with bylaws? I'm not the only one who's worried about a zoning change. We have a petition. We submitted it. It has 52 signatures from people who, like my family and I, oppose this change. As a business owner, I support and I advocate for the growth of business. I totally get it. In fact, I plan to start another business eventually here in Chatham-Kent. However, expansion must be conducted mindfully. The Crazy Shed company has outgrown its current location, and while we support their expansion, it should not come at the expense of wildlife. It should not come at the expense of the residents who are living there, the enjoyment of their property, and their quality of life. A brief search of local properties reveals more suitable locations for an expanding business. Okay, so this one property shown at 6 Drake Road is surrounded by green space, which would mitigate adverse quality of life issues due to the absence of nearby residents. It's close to the town of Merlin, allowing the current owners and employees to walk there if they live nearby without negatively impacting wildlife, quality of life, or property values. The next property is at 4495 Talbot Trail. It's 4.6 acres of rural, already industrially zoned. It has 3 commercial buildings and just steps from Lake Erie. It also has the potential to change the zoning to residential if the Crazy Shed company wanted to have their families live there. As a business owner myself, I understand that businesses go through changes. Should the Crazy Shed company decide to sell or face an economic downturn, the zoning change would scar the area. Property values would decrease and the natural beauty of the biodiversity would be damaged. Another business might take over the property, exacerbating the quality of life concerns. For the reasons stated above, I support Crazy Shed Company's growth, but I oppose the rezoning of 115 to industrial. Thank you for your time.
Next, we have Garth Reed. After that will be Mike Davidson.
Honorable councilors and mayor, my name is Garth Reed. I have been a police officer for 13 years, previously working for Peel Regional Police and now the Chatham-Kent Police Service. During my time with Peel Police, I worked in the homicide unit, the street crime guns and gangs unit, the human trafficking unit, the commercial auto crime unit, the 12th Division Criminal Investigation Bureau, and I worked part-time in the Strategic Tactical Enforcement Policing Unit, which proactively targeted high-risk, violent gang offenders. I recently joined the Chatham-Kent Police because my family and I chose this municipality and the town of Merlin to be our home. We believe the municipality's values aligned with our own and saw potential in the town of Merlin. The proposed zoning change at 115 Erie Street South does not support this honorable council's priorities. Allowing industrial use there will not bring positive growth to our community. Our community is growing organically. People like myself and my family are joining the community to be closer to nature and enjoy a slower, more peaceful life. People are not attracted to living near industrial zones, which is evidenced by the decrease in property values near such areas due to noise, air pollution, increased traffic, and negative visual impact. This decline erodes the wealth of the current homeowners and reduces the overall attractiveness of the residential community. A loss in property values will subsequently correlate in a decrease in tax revenue to the municipality and detract from diverse, robust, and sustainable growth in the future. Trucks carrying oversized sheds do not promote safety, especially with young children in the area. The Public Health Agency of Canada explains that green spaces provide health benefits, including improved mental health, physical fitness, cognitive and immune function, as well as lower mortality rates. Studies have also shown that childhood exposure to green spaces reduce the risk of developing an array of psychiatric disorders. I have heard many fond recollections from people of childhood time spent on the property and by the pond. This green space has already served to benefit the well-being of the people of the community, and changing its zoning is a detriment to future generations. The proposed zoning change does not ensure environmental sustainability. Quite the opposite. It forfeits an established wildlife habitat. The property is teeming with life and growth. A zoning change on this property would mean the loss of an important and established habitat for local wildlife. The Planning Department has presented you with a recommendation for change without any supporting information to justify it. They have not conducted the proper studies. A noise, dust, traffic, environmental impact assessment should have been conducted, given all of these impacts will occur if an approval is granted. They have justified the recommendation by referencing blanket policies that have not and are not working in our town. I respectfully ask this council to take the time to mindfully consider this zoning change and its overreaching effect on the community and future generations. Further, it must be noted that since April, the applicants have been operating as if this property was rezoned. They have been operating illegally long before the application was made and are still continuing to do so. Non-compliance with zoning should not be rewarded with approval that will negatively affect the community. In my initial conversations with Mr. Ben Coop, I was inspired by his accomplishments and his reverence for history. I asked him to reconsider and explore the possibility of the community or municipality purchasing the property with grant money for the purpose of turning it into a park. Areas of concern could be cordoned off and phytoremediation utilized to address soil contamination. This would allow the area to serve as habitat while the vegetation repairs the soil. Walking trails could be created, allowing the community to enjoy the space, as has been the town's history. Mr. Coop's family and the Crazy Shed Company could be recognized further in contribution to the community. Lower Thames Conservation could manage the space, and I would gladly volunteer my time to help maintain it. This resolution is environmentally sustainable, honors the town's history, provides a legacy for Mr. Coop and his family, raises the town's appeal, and supports the residents' well-being. I hope we act today for a better tomorrow and make a decision that future generations will be proud of. Thank you for your time and consideration.
And the last deputation we have notice of is Mike Davidson.
Mr. Mayor, esteemed councilors, ladies and gentlemen, I don't have a pedigree as a law enforcement officer, and I can't say that I just arrived here 2 years ago from Toronto, but I can say that I'm a beekeeper, a businessman, and I grew up on Grey Line, not far from this subject property. Tonight I am here to present a petition for, as well as state my support for, the zoning amendment by Crazy Sheds and its owner, Karsten Goosens. Pam, my wife, and myself are the owners of the Summers Gold Honey Company, located just up Hattie Street from Crazy Sheds. As such, we have experience with the operations of and the operators of this business. First, I would like to state that Karsten and his family are some of the genuinely nicest people you could ever ask to meet, while also being hard-working, family-oriented people. The Goosens family have made a substantial investment in Merlin, and they, as well as their extended family, have put down roots as a family and made a commitment to the community. Merlin needs more like Karsten and his family. As a matter of fact, every community needs more people like this. As for business, Crazy Sheds is low impact as far as noise and other nuisances generally attributed to manufacturing businesses. Their product passes our shop several times each day and poses no negative effect on our business. Speaking of the property itself, the property is the former location of a farm supply company and a rail line. A portion of this site has been identified as contaminated by previous operations, and Mr. Goosens has committed to remediating the site and building homes along the Erie Street base. I see this as a distinct positive. The property will be remediated. You had me at cleaning up, Kirsten. And any additional leaching of contaminants will be stopped. Mr. Goosens' immediate plans for the balance of the property involves additional space for the storage of completed inventory. It's worthy of note that the adjacent property is owned and operated by Bradco Drilling, which is a distinctly industrial operation, and Bradco is located on the property, which originally hosted trucking operations of Frederick Transport. A zoning of industrial is consistent to prior use as well as consistent within usage of adjacent properties. Communities live and die by the existence of business. Mr. Goosens' business currently employs 10 people with, I would expect, the distinct possibility of more as Mr. Goosens has been showing consistent growth. I have heard grumblings about the mowing and disturbing wildlife. This is an urban setting. The wildlife we're discussing are such things as mice, rats, and ticks. There exists a bylaw requiring that property owners maintain their properties in a neat and tidy fashion, such as to prevent the proliferation of undesirable wildlife like raccoons, coyotes, rats, mice, and ticks. I see Mr. Goosens' plans for the property as a positive in terms of livability of adjacent properties. If you want to find wildlife, you look no further than the conservation area on William Street. Property owners adjacent to the conservation area will tell you they face a consistent losing battle with vermin. The petitioners opposing the zoning have used the property free of charge for their own entertainment for a number of years and see Carson's plans as hampering that. There is a pond at the back of the property that the community has used for recreational purposes. Mind you, they have done so by trespassing on private property. Mr. Goosens has committed to preserving this pond and making an effort to create private access. I applaud Mr. Goosens for his generosity, and I hope that the community can be accommodated in this fashion, though I have my misgivings with regard to liability and insurance. Besides, Mr. Goosens shouldn't be obligated in this fashion. From looking at some of the drawings, it would appear that there are some encroachments to the address. Thank you. The petition, if you'd like to have it. Actually, since I got 54 more seconds, I should mention I have 41 signatures. The petition never left my store. People had to come to my store to put their name on here, and the addresses are distinctly Aberdeen, Erie Street, Hill Street, Erie Street, William Street. These are people who live adjacent or near this property, and they want to see Karsten take it over, fix it up, and make it into something. These are people, a lot of them actually are 70 plus, because I saw them come in and sign it. These are people that remember when Merlin actually had businesses, actually had a future, and they want to see one again. These are the residents of Merlin. These are the business people of Merlin. These are the people that have been here forever. Thank you.
Is there anyone else present other than the applicant and or the agent with an interest in the application? If so, please indicate by raising your hand if you'd like to speak. Seeing none, the applicant, are you here? Would you like to come up and share any comments regarding the report or comments that you've heard?
Mayor Caniff, councillors, members of the planning department, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Diane Burke, and I'm one of the applicants. So I'll just address a few concerns that were raised this evening. First of all, it's the use of the land, having portable sheds come in prior to a zoning change. So my family's owned this property for 25 years. And we're based out of Leamington. My dad always thought that one of the grandkids would come up with an interesting use for the property, but they've all pursued other careers, and they're living in different areas. So my father has known that the community has been using the property for various uses, and in 2021, he had to embark on a major cleanup of the site. Some of the neighbors to adjacent were using the property for their vehicles, and another neighbor actually set up a scrap recycling depot on this property without authorization. I don't have this on a PowerPoint, but I've got pictures of trucks and campers and boats, and all of this stuff was on the property. There were neighbors using it for sort of non-evasive uses, like walking their dog. There are the boats, tires, garbage. So in 2021, he embarked on this cleanup, and he hauled away 20 truckloads of garbage and broken concrete at a cost of over $20,000. Dad was also aware that the neighbors were using the pond for community gatherings because of the evidence of campfires and garbage around the pond, including beer cans and food containers. He installed no trespassing signs and danger deep water signs, and these signs were taken down. Again, I know that not all of the residents were using the property with negative intentions, but that's just the outcome when people have access and they start treating the property like their own over a 20-year period. So I understand that change is difficult and it's hard in a community where you've had access to a property. I really understand the disappointment of the Reed family. You've heard 3 of them this evening, because they purchased their property and the previous owner should have conveyed to them the plans that we had for developing, because I sat and spoke with her about it many, many times. So the fact that this was not conveyed to the new owners could have perhaps given them a reason to choose elsewhere if they knew that this property was slated to be redeveloped. The idea of turning it into a conservation area with public funds, I'm not sure that that idea has any possibility, given that we have a conservation area within 500 meters. We also have the Merlin Kinsman Park within 500 meters of this site. So the small community is really well served by green space and parks. That said, I know why neighbors who have used the property for so long and possibly had the enticement of turning this land into a conservation area would be willing to sign a petition to affect that type of outcome, which I think is highly improbable. So our family is really impressed with Karsten. We've seen his operation off of Hattie Street. We know what kind of business he runs. He is intent on being a great neighbor and living in the community, actually eventually building a home on that site and operating his business in the back. It's really just a replication of an existing business that he has just around the corner. So given that, and that it's in keeping with the official plan, the result is an increase to the tax base, business activity, and single-family homes. We feel that this is a sound and a good plan for the community. Thank you for your time. Any questions about?
Any questions? Nope. I'm going to ask, is there any questions of administration now that you have everything you've heard? So we'll call up Anthony again, Councillor Anderson, then Councillor Harrigan.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the deputations that were sent both by email and that spoke here tonight. I guess my only question for you, Anthony, would be, like, does the rezoning of a property like this warrant doing any of the suggested studies, such as noise dust, an EA? Like, would that be warranted with this space?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Those were brought to the attention of administration, planning services. Those are not studies that would be applicable to this use in this site. The site has not been designated to have any natural heritage feature, and the proposed use is for the outdoor storage of these structures currently. If there was further development as permitted by the proposed zoning, where further development would happen on the property for more of a manufacturing type use, it would likely go through a site plan control process at that time, and those studies could be required at that time as well.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Harrigan?
Thank you. Councillor Anderson asked my question about the deferred development current zoning, so thank you for that. The second question I had, and this, the owner as well as the final deputation spoke a bit to it, but Anthony, can you share information about the green space that currently exists in Merlin that you are aware of? I heard a couple of examples. I also know I play baseball on a Friday night behind the recreation center in Merlin, so I'm just wondering if you can share a bit of that, and I'm sorry that's an off-the-cuff question that you may not know exactly all the answer to.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I don't know all the answers, but I can confirm or agree with what was presented before council tonight in terms of what the green space, what if green space exists in Merlin and how it services the community. And also just to reiterate that these are private lands. They're not in public ownership, so that, I think changes the scenario a bit of what the potential of these lands are.
No further questions, Mayor Caniff.
Okay, with that, Councillor Anderson and Councillor Harrigan, can I get you to put this on the floor, please?
Yes, I'm happy to do that.
I'll second the recommendations.
Okay, last call for questions. Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor Allen? Yes. Councillor McGrail?
Yes.
And Councillor Finn? She had said she had to step away, so she must not be back yet. All votes are in. Motion passes 17-0.
We'll go on to the consent agenda.
We received no deputations for items on the current agenda, so for the consent agenda, the following items have been placed aside for discussion. Item 16A, tender award for the hot mix paving resurfacing, has been pulled by Councillor Sakachi. 17A, the Chatham-Kent Workforce Planning and Research 2024 update, is a presentation by administration. 18A, Public Conduct Policy and Trespass Bylaw, pulled by Councillor Jubenville. 21A, Permanent Closure of Access to Burns Beach, pulled by Councillor Bondi, Sakachi, and Anderson. 21B, Update on the proposed changes to leaf and yard waste collection, pulled by Councillor Wright. 21C, Field of Dreams Baseball Project, pulled by Councillors Crew, Allen, Finn, Story, Doyle, and Jubenville. 21F, Von Ayres Cultural Center and Jean Gordon Hall lease agreement, pulled by Councillors Hall, C. McGregor, and Sakachi. 21G, Traffic and Parking Bylaw update for school areas in the community of Chatham, pulled by Councillor Story. 21I, motion by Councillor Allen regarding the inclusion of the review of King Street Chatham in the Transportation Master Plan, pulled by Councillor Allen, Councillor Sakachi, and Councillor Jubenville. Therefore, the following items will be approved in one motion. Item 15A, B, and C, 18B, 19A, 20A, 20D, 20E, and 20A, 21D, 21E, and 21H.
Councillor McDonald and Councillor Jubenville, can I get you to move the consent agenda, please?
Yep, I'll move it.
And so seconded.
Any questions? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor Allen?
Yes.
Councillor McGrail?
Yes.
And Councillor Finn?
Yes.
All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0.
Item 16, tender awards.
16A, contract T24-105, hot mix resurfacing.
Councillor Sakachi and Councillor Doyle, can I get you to put this on the floor, please?
Happy to move it, Mayor Caniff.
Happy to second that one.
Councillor Sakachi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Just one really brief question. Just from an operational perspective, I see that there is a street in Blenheim area that is scheduled to be completed again, which was recently approved. And I just anticipate once this work commences that there's going to be several inquiries regarding the repaving of that street, and that there's likely going to be additional inquiries. So I just wanted to see if it was best that we could refer to the comments here made in open session, just to give a kind of update on John Street that is happening to be getting repaved again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There was previous work done on John Street through a separate contract. We are working towards a resolution with that contractor on that particular contract, and at this point in time, we are repaving that road this year through our mill and pave contract.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. That's all for me. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other questions, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor Finn?
Yes.
Councillor McGrail?
Yes.
And Councillor Allen?
Yes.
All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0.
Item 17, Chief Administrative Office.
17A is the Chatham-Kent Workforce Planning and Research 2024 update. There is a presentation by administration.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff and Council. I'm Jason Stubbits, the Coordinator of Workforce Planning and Research with the municipality, and I'm here this evening to provide an update on the most recent research findings from the Chatham-Kent Workforce Planning Board. So, as part of my role with the Community Attraction and Promotion team, I'm really focused on conducting research and analysis into our local labor market and making sure that information is accessible to all stakeholders in the community, including employers. Also within my role, I do help support the work of the Chatham-Kent Workforce Planning Board, which is funded by the Ministry of Labor, Immigration, Training, and Skills Development to conduct research on an annual basis. Our CK Workforce Planning Board has been around since 2009 and is one of 26 boards across the province. On the screen here, you do see the current members of the Chatham-Kent Workforce Planning Board. I did just want to acknowledge them this evening for their contributions to the work of the board and the community. So from April 2023 to March of 2024, the Workforce Planning Board was funded to conduct 3 research projects, and you see them on the screen there: the Local Labor Market Plan, the Employer One Survey, and a Workforce Gaps research project looking at international student talent in Chatham-Kent. So the Local Labor Market Plan is developed on an annual basis to highlight current labor market trends that we see in our community, and it's a great resource for job seekers, educators, employers, policymakers, and many other stakeholders. So a few trends that we saw in our Local Labor Market Plan. First one I wanted to share was our population. We've seen continued population growth in Chatham-Kent since 2015, and that's extremely noticeable on the left side graph there. According to Statistics Canada, our population as of July 1st, 2023, sits at 111,091, which is the highest it's been since 2007. The increase we're seeing in our population is being driven largely by inward migration. So in recent years, we've seen a sharp increase in intra-provincial migration to Chatham-Kent. So that's individuals moving to our community from elsewhere in the province. And as you see on the right side there, in 2023, we had net intra-provincial migration of 1,639 people. So we've seen tremendous growth from intra-provincial migration since the pandemic. You'll see that sharp increase. If you look at 2015 and before that, we were actually losing people to elsewhere in the province. One positive from this is the fastest growing age group is those under the age of 15. So again, young people coming into the community, working age individuals as well. Important to note, yes, our population is seeing this growth. The fastest growing age bracket in the community is the 65 plus. So that's important to keep note of. Another trend we saw is around our education rates. So 31% of our population aged 25 to 64 have a college diploma. Our diploma rates or college diploma rates in the community are much higher than that of the province and the country, but it does align with our workforce trends. We do see lower university education rates in our community, but between 2016 and 2021, there was a 22% increase in the 25 to 64 age group in Chatham-Kent with a university degree compared to a 15% increase across the country. So we're closing that gap. And then finally, our population without any formal education, so less than high school, declined by 10% between 2016 and 2021. So another great trend to see. The last finding from our local labor market plan that I wanted to share comes from our anticipated growth demand. Between 2023 and 2031, Lightcast Analysts has Chatham-Kent forecasted to have 17,600 jobs to fill. So from those 17,600, 13,750 are from replacement demand and 3,810 are from growth demand. As you see on the right side there, manufacturing and healthcare will be the main drivers of this growth, followed by retail, trade, transportation, and agriculture. Switching to our Employer One survey, we've conducted the survey on an annual basis since 2015. It's really an opportunity for us to hear from employers and their workforce and experiences. In 2023, we heard from 112 employers through the survey, representing over 11,100 workers in the community. What we heard was employers continue to hire or plan to hire. 78% of employers hired within the last year, and 65% of employers intend to hire in the next 12 months. Looking at recruitment, most employers are looking for their talent locally, as 95% said that they recruit locally. But we also see up there that employers are not shying away from looking outside of the community to address their talent needs, as 34% said they recruit provincially, almost 9% nationally, and almost 5% internationally. We continue to hear from employers that they have hard to fill positions. 56% of employers said that they had a hard to fill position in the previous year. It was encouraging that this number was down slightly from the previous year's survey, hopefully suggesting things are getting a bit better. But lack of qualified applicants was the top reason that positions were hard to fill, according to employers. And then finally, retention continues to be a focus and concern for employers. 60% of employers said that employee retention is a concern for their business. They noted high competition of workers as the top reason, and wage and salary increases is the top strategy that employers are using to address it. And then moving on to the third and final research project that the CK Workforce Planning Board conducted last year. This was an in-depth look at our international student talent in Chatham-Kent. So looking at international student retention after graduation is one pipeline of workers that we as a community can and should use to grow or address labor force needs in the community, especially considering we have over 400 international students studying locally in Chatham-Kent. So research showed us that international students are enrolled in programs necessary for the local labor market. So based on enrollment data from our local post-secondary institutions, business programs, the early childhood education program, healthcare programs such as nursing, development service worker, personal support worker, or occupational therapist is primarily where international students are studying. And again, these programs really do reflect needs in our labor force. A large focus of the research was to hear from a variety of stakeholders, including employers, international students, key players in the immigration sector, as well as the local post-secondary institutions. What we heard from employers was these students were viewed in a positive light and employers were willing to hire them, but there were some challenges that they noted, mainly language barriers, Canadian workplace, culture differences, student scheduling, and transportation. And then what we heard from international students, many have come to love their time in the community and would actually prefer to stay in Chatham-Kent post-graduation, but finding employment is the prime consideration for them to do so. So looking ahead, so that was the research that we conducted last year, the 3 research reports. This year, the ministry has funded us to conduct 4 research projects. So we will continue to engage employers through the Employer One survey, which will be open for the month of November. We will continue to review and update the local labor market plan. And then 2 new research projects that we'll focus on this year. First is the Addressing Barriers to Employment in Chatham-Kent. So that one's going to look at underrepresented groups in our workforce, such as immigrants or peoples with disabilities, and look at recommendations to address those gaps. And then a Green or Clean Economy in Chatham-Kent research project, which will look to better understand the experiences of employers in the sector and workforce needed for the future. These 4 research projects are either ongoing or will be started shortly, with a release date of February of 2025 at the CK Workforce Planning Board Forum. And then finally, the last thing I just wanted to conclude with was to share some resources that exist to access labor market information in the community. So the ckworkforce.ca website is a dedicated website to labor market information for those seeking more information. The site offers interactive data sets and up-to-date data from a variety of sources. All research reports that are developed through the CK Workforce Planning Board or the work that I do are posted to the website. The LMI data request tool continues to be a well-used resource in the community, allowing employers or other stakeholders the ability to reach out to us with specific data requests. And then finally, the monthly newsletter is released on a monthly basis and is also shared to the website. So these are some of the resources that are available to those individuals still looking for more labor market information. So that is what I have. Thank you again for your time. And I was only able, of course, to pull out a few findings from each research report. So I do encourage you to go through and check out those reports if they are of interest to you. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Any questions? Councillor Anderson.
Thank you for the report. That's very informative. I just have one quick question. When we talk about the difficulties with hiring, one of the problems was qualifications. Do we reach out to the school boards to see what the opportunities are there for like co-op students in secondary, like in high schools? Is that something that we could expand on? Is that something that's within our realm? Do we have those types of conversations?
Through you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor, for that question. We do, through a lot of our working groups, we do engage with our post-secondary institute, or not post-secondary, our secondary school, to kind of have those discussions around apprenticeship, around co-op. So those discussions through our working groups do happen. So I can share some of those groups with you as well.
That's great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Seeing no other questions, we'll move on to item, oh, sorry, Councillor Story.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't get my head up quite quick enough. Thank you, Jason, for that presentation. This is really helpful data for us to look at, and appreciate that the summary, and I look forward to digging into this report a little deeper. You mentioned that many employers are finding it hard to find employees, and you also mentioned that international students want to stay but are finding it hard to find employment. So that, to me, I see an opportunity, maybe a bit of a disconnect, but also a real opportunity. I'm wondering if that's being worked on right now to figure out how we can better match those two, because that seems like a real opportunity for us to benefit from that on both sides of the equation. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor. That's a great question. Absolutely. One of the recommendations in the report, actually two of them that stand out, were to create a working group to better understand the experiences and what groups need to come together to have those discussions. So that is ongoing. And another one was to create specific sector-based working groups with employers that can go into the college and talk to these students, so that the students, A, become aware of the employers that exist, but the employers are aware of what's out there in the community. So through two of those recommendations, I do anticipate those being two big focuses happening.
That's great to hear. I know St. Clair College often is seeking feedback. I can't obviously speak for them, but I know I've had conversations over the years where they are often quite open to hearing feedback about what kind of programs they can offer to better meet the needs of what our employers are looking for. So I'm sure you have a pretty good relationship with them, and they have a role. I saw Mark Benoit's name up there, so they're obviously critically engaged in this work, so I hope that can continue. I just wanted to mention, I was also really encouraged to see that you're looking at a study in the coming year about addressing barriers, including those with disabilities, especially today when we're talking about accessibility in a more fulsome way. I just wanted to mention that persons with disabilities continue to face barriers and stigma when they're looking for work and when they're trying to thrive or advance in their careers, and that at the national level, employment rates of women and men are almost at 50% with disabilities and are substantially lower compared to those without disabilities, which is closer to 80%. And more than 30% of people with disabilities report that their disability makes it difficult for them to change jobs and advance in their careers. So I'm really encouraged to see that we're looking at that locally, because the more we can engage all potential employees and accommodate disabilities in the workplace, I think that's a win-win for everybody. So I'm really happy to see that, and I look forward to that report. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to item 18, corporate services.
18A, public conduct policy and trespass bylaw.
Councillor Juvenile and Councillor Thompson, can I get you put this on the floor, please?
I so move. And I will second.
Councillor Juvenile, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I was wondering if we can vote on these three separately, if we can divide them and vote separately on them, and I'll explain why.
So my, I guess, questions or concerns are just with number 1, and that's what I'll speak to. Who determines, first of all, what triggered the public conduct policy? Like, what, is there something that's triggering this, that we have to have a conduct for our public?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to take some of these questions. Thank you, Councillor Jubenville, for your question. So currently we have an employee code of conduct policy, and as you know, a council code of conduct policy. And to round out the activity that we experience in these venues, a public code of conduct policy was also imagined. It's becoming a best practice across the province, with a number of other municipalities already having adopted public codes of conduct just for the purposes described in the policy, to be able to have a fair process to manage these situations and be communicative about what those processes are when these situations arise.
Okay, thank you. So when we apply the public conduct policy, who will determine if a member of the public has breached the conduct policy? Who's going to be the judge, or I guess, I don't know how else to refer to them. Is there a panel? Is it one person?
So the process will be, if you take a look through the policy itself, it breaks down a couple of different scenarios. But in short, essentially what happens, depending on where the incident takes place, so if it takes place at a supervisor or manager's level, they may first be the first group that would take a look at it and would take notes and assess the situation, and then they would elevate the discussion to their director and eventually to the general manager. Depending on the set of circumstances and what the suggested consequences might be, there may also be consultation with the Director of Legal Services and his team, and or with the CAO. So very much will be a consultative process, just depending on the severity of the situation.
Okay, and my last question, and then I just have a couple of comments. Have we imagined any increased costs that we will have to consider to enforce this policy?
Essentially, there's not an additional cost, in the sense that we're dealing with these issues now. It's just that we haven't had very prescriptive step-by-step processes that we're going to follow. So we're dealing with them now. It's not going to be an increase in cost in order to deal with those things.
Okay, thank you for your answers, Kathy. So from my perspective, I see things when we have these kind of issues or conflicts. We have the police, we have a criminal law system, we have an Ontario Human Rights Code. So I guess I'm confused why we need another level of bureaucracy to monitor, for us to monitor the public. With that being said, I do not condone harassment or threats of any nature toward any member of municipal staff or council. But I just feel these agencies, we have them at our disposal in order to deal with situations that may arise of harassments or threats. If a member of the public is just annoying us, and if we've done everything that we can do to satisfy their questions or their concerns or their needs, then can we not just move on? Like, do we have to continue to engage with them, or can we just cut ties with them?
Thank you for your additional questions, Councillor Jubenville. So under the policy and the characterization of misconduct, there could be situations where the member of the public has not done something that gives rise to one of those pieces of legislation. It may not be a criminal act. They may not have had a violation of the Human Rights Code in some way, but it still may meet the definition of misconduct under this policy. And therefore, this policy provides us with a process to be able to address those kinds of things. The escalation may happen with those other parties, as you describe, if there are also intersections to those spaces. Nevertheless, we're still required, notwithstanding those laws, to provide a healthy and safe environment for our employees, and this forms part of that.
Okay, I can appreciate that. I'm just, on the flip side, I'm just afraid of hindering those who are exercising their rights of thought, belief, opinion, and expression. And if they're doing so without acting in a threatening or harassing way, I just find it a slippery slope that we could be engaging on. It feels a bit overreaching. We may not like or agree with what some members of the public, what they say to us or how they treat us. I myself can attest to this in recent months that I received a lot of emails from people that disagreed with me. But at the end of the day, I will do everything to uphold that person's right to speak out against me in a respectful way. They have that right, and I would never want to take that away from them. So for that reason, I can't support the first part of the policy. So that's why I've asked for it to be voted on in 3 separate sections. So that's all.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, though, the section, or the second and third are connected to the first, though. They are connected. So we wouldn't vote on 3 as an example if you weren't voting on 2, because if you didn't have the policy, we wouldn't have an appeal process, et cetera.
Okay, I understand. Okay, thank you.
Michael, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just a clarification, the comment was made, can we sort of disengage from those situations? In some situations, we cannot. We have an obligation to deal with people, and even if they are acting in a manner which is, I like your use of the words respectful, if they're acting in a manner which isn't disrespectful but isn't criminal, we still have an obligation to deal with that situation. So in long-term care, for instance, if we're dealing with a family member that has a power of attorney, we can't disengage. That's the person who we have to deal with in order to take care of that resident, and we're required to take care of that resident. In social services, we have certain obligations. We have to provide people with emergency housing. There's a lot of things that we have to do. So as much as we'd like to disengage and withdraw the service from that individual, we can't. We're still required to, we maybe can change the terms of the arrangement, but we're still required to provide the service. And so that's why there's a real need to make sure that there's a mechanism in place so that people, don't treat staff. And it's not just staff, it's others as well. This isn't just about staff. This is about if you're in this building seeking our services and you're interacting with another member of the public that's here, this applies to that relationship as well. So it's just not just about staff being annoyed. It's much bigger than that.
Emily, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple points that I think are helpful for you, Councillor Jubenville, to reflect on and think council in general. In my experience in legal services, currently we do not have any sort of overarching policy to deal with this. Now, that doesn't change the fact that the municipality is still an owner of property, and so the Trespass to Property Act continues to apply. It also doesn't change the fact that the municipality has an obligation to visitors to our premises to keep them safe. And then on a third hand, it also doesn't change our obligation to employees to do everything reasonable to keep them safe. So the policy, I think to Ms. Hoffman's point, it's important to bear in mind, this really isn't changing anything in a substantive sense. We currently have an obligation to trespass people if they become dangerous, and we do that. So this is really going to codify that process, and importantly for people who are subject to trespass, it gives them a transparent and procedurally fair way to challenge that decision, which currently there's no structure for that. And I think that's important in terms of, if I'm a member of the public and I want to access services, if there's going to be any impairment there, we want to make sure that there's a process to challenge that so that it's fair. So the policy does set that out, and I think that that's of benefit to the public in accessing services. The last thing I would say, and to your comments, because I think they're very valid, it's our practice in legal services when we give advice on trespassing that is a very extreme remedy. So we don't exercise that lightly, and the policy is drafted with this in mind. And the reason, as Mr. Dubin has just explained, is that we take it it's very, very important that people have access to vital services, things like housing services, Ontario Works. These are really essential services for people to get through their daily lives. So even where we get to the point where somebody is not allowed to come onto the property, we always have to find a way to make sure that services are being offered and facilitated to them. So again, these things have been taken into view in this policy because it absolutely is fundamental that even in extreme circumstances, there's still a level of access to vital services. The last point I would make is that in my experience, trespass really, that is takes into account all of the factors, typically a history of behavior, and really is only the most extreme circumstances where there's sort of an imminent safety concern, where that even becomes something the municipality entertains. And I think, again, if you read through the policy, the idea that administration is expected to look at the global circumstances in order to justify that decision, that's codified in there. So I just wanted to offer those comments because I think that a lot of the policy has been crafted in a way that is sensitive to the concern of ensuring we're not arbitrarily precluding access to elected officials or important services the municipality provides.
Okay, thank you for the further communication about it. I still have concerns about using it in some regards as a tool to, I understand trespass, I'm completely on the same page. I just have, it's very vague, so we reference emails or telephone conversations. So, but then yet we're putting it in the same category as someone who's coming in and posing perhaps a potential physical threat. So it's very wide and broad. So maybe it should be more specific, I don't know, but that's where I'm struggling with it. Anyway, thank you for all the additional comments.
Any other questions? Councillor Harrigan?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Through you, I believe, to Kathy or Emily. I'm just confirming that this policy would apply to all of the public assets or services of the municipality. So I'm thinking about libraries and arenas and service centers, not just necessarily council chambers or the civic center proper per se.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's correct.
Thank you.
Harrigan, yes.
And I just wanted to perhaps make a comment or an example, and I think sometimes these policies, and I do appreciate in the appendix on page 5, there's a number of examples where we might enact this policy where it's not extreme, or maybe we wouldn't call the police, but it's important to have a policy to lean on. In the theme of hockey for the evening, in other municipal arenas, I have witnessed, unfortunately, tense parent arguments in the stands, and I have seen municipal staff in arenas approach parents to say, unfortunately, you're violating our respectful policies and our code of conduct, you have to leave. And those staff are empowered to do that because even though they're frontline workers, they know they have a policy. I've also heard people in response say or suggest, well, this is a public building. My taxes pay for this building. I can stay here if I want to. And in fact, that's not true. And I come from the healthcare system where we talk about patient rights and responsibilities, and there's certainly rights that we all have as taxpayers, as members of the public, but access to those services do come with the responsibilities, and that needs to be grounded in respect. So I just wanted to say that I support this. I really appreciate Councillor Jubenville and our legal department's conversation here because I think it raises more awareness of the importance. But ultimately, we need to demand and require respect for everybody in the municipal setting and in our community, and this policy does a great job of setting that bar, so thank you.
Seeing no other questions, we will keep it together based on Kathy, you were saying that, I agree that it all has to be one, you can't, so we'll keep it all. Councillor Bondi?
Oh, yeah, thanks, Mayor Kemp. Yeah, to that, if I was to vote against number 1, but it passed, then would I still be able to support number 3? Like, I'm getting towards your procedure.
Sorry, we're keeping them all together, so it's an all or nothing.
Right, that's my point, is that not keeping them together. Like, if I voted against number 1, but it passed, I would still support number 3, so I don't want to vote against number 3.
So, Mr. Mayor,
Well, I know, that's what I'm
number
asking, why
3 goes with number 1 in the sense that in the public code of conduct policy, there is a provision for appeal, and the cost associated with appeal is $200. What council could do is pass number 1 if they decided they wanted to pass number 1, and then with number 3, you could decide If you didn't want there to be a fee, or if you wanted there to be a different fee, someone could make a motion about that, and the clerk would walk you through that if that were the case. But that would be one of the options of a discussion around separating things. But to vote on number three assumes that number 1 has been passed.
All right, forget it. I know what I'm thinking, but I'm not very smart.
I mean, it's an alternative we could vote on.
No, it's fine, don't worry,
All right.
I'm okay.
All right, perfect. Let's, so with that, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor Allen,
Yes.
Councillor Finn,
Yes.
and Councillor McGrail.
Yes.
All votes are in. Motion passes 15-3.
We'll go on to item 21, infrastructure and engineering services.
21A, permanent closure of access to Burns Beach, community of Raleigh.
Councillor Bondi and Councillor Sakachi, can I get you to put this on the floor, please?
Happy to put it on the floor, Mayor Caniff.
Seconded, Mayor Caniff.
Councillor Bondi, you're up, and followed by Councillor Sakachi.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Okay, so with this one, I hope that we do not pass this, and the reason for that is I've gone to this, like I just used to always call it the Dillon, right? But Burns Beach. I've been going there at least a couple of times a year for like 30 years. It's a real hidden kind of gem. It's at the end of the Dillon Road. Burns Beach was, I think I just found it was called Burns Beach about 5 years ago or so. But yeah, there's not much of a beach there right now. I'll give you that, that's for sure. But as we all know, the water levels go up and down in Lake Erie. So the beach will return eventually. Currently, the water's still a little high. So no, there's not a whole lot to concern yourself with as far as the beach. Now, the concern in the report is the access from Talbot Trail and how, I guess it's kind of hard to describe. It's described in the report, but it is a downward slope and there is a turn. It's not very wide. It's not the easiest thing in maneuver, but it's not impossible. And I think in the report it says you typically have to back out, and you don't. If you do a 4-point turn, you can turn around, you know, which can be done, like maybe not in a school bus, but in a Veracruz, you can do it. So it's not ideal, but I think it's a little nanny state to say, oh, we have to block it off because it's not safe enough. Like, I'm pretty sure nobody's probably fallen off the path into the lake. I would assume not. I'm sure that would be in the report if that was the case. What it is, it's just a neat little hidden gem. It's pretty busy, to be honest. I've never been there with nobody else there. I've often seen motorcyclists in the summertime. Well, I've never been there, not in the summer. But they'll pull over at this place to kind of take a break, cool off. I just don't understand, like, blocking the access. I just don't get it. Like, if you're not comfortable with your driving skills, then don't go. It's easy. And it's not like a surprise. It's not like you pull in and you're obligated to continue on. If you look at it and you think, I don't know, that drive's not for me, then you can just turn around. I just think it's unnecessary, and I really don't like the idea of shutting down waterfront access to, you know, hey, Jimmy, go home and play with your phone. Like, that's the last thing we want to do. We want to keep these things open, right? So, you know, it's $7,000, not a lot of money. Conversely, if this does pass and the obstruction goes up, people will still go, and then we're going to have people on Talbot Trail parking on the road, which probably is far less safe than parking on this skinny little driveway that leads into the thing. So I just think it's unnecessary. When I read it, I thought, no, we really shouldn't do this. Again, it's not that big of a danger. It's not like trees falling down on you, which is terrible. So really, I just think it's unnecessary. Leave it open, leave well enough alone. I don't think anybody's ever been hurt down there. And it's just a neat little thing. And again, I just think it's kind of nanny status to say, oh, you know, it's a little too dangerous. It's not that dangerous. Again, I've been there I don't know how many times. So I suggest we keep it open. That's all.
Councillor Scotchy, followed by Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Yeah, I just had a couple of questions, more of a technical nature. I must say, me and my friends in the high school days, we did a lot of studying down at that beach. So it's sad to see that it's on the agenda tonight for potential of closing it down. I guess just from a technical standpoint, Mr. Brown, what went into? I know that on a daily basis, and especially the IES staff are looking at different exercises on a regular basis. I guess just from a technical standpoint, what occurred in 2022 to have legal look into the ownership of the beach? And I remember this being advertised significantly as a public beach back in the day. So how did that change in 2022?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the question. It's Ryan Brown, Director of Public Works. In the report, it mentions that in 2022, legal services came about. That was due to a resident complaint. So there are several owners that live who can kind of overlook the bluff, and we had complaints due to nefarious activities occurring down on the beach, and we looked into it. I personally and some of my team went out there because I'd never been to Burns Beach, and immediately when I looked into this, said, how are we maintaining this? How are we going to maintain it going forward? At that time, there was very, very little, almost no beach at all. I've heard many years ago you could actually drive out on the beach there. It was quite significant. So that's actually what led to Public Works first investigating this. And then as well, when we heard, it's a public beach, we talked to the public health team. And they said, no, we stopped water testing down there because it's not Chatham-Kent owned property. So it really can't be advertised as a public beach. So there's been a couple different exercises where this piece of property has come up, leading us to today.
Yeah, I think that you've heard some probably correct statements in regards to the beach before. In transparency, I did go down there yesterday, not on the beach. There was no beach. The first thing I did, there was a couple people walking up. They actually said to me, there's no beach here right now, but was able to kind of take a drive down there, and I just took some pictures and that. I guess just my only question is I understand that that property, since it is not municipal property anymore, I can understand why, we wouldn't be advertising it. But from like the actual road allowance, if that's what it's technically called, or the extension of the Dillon, I'm just looking for some clarification why. Like, I know there's some reference into the report in regards to the bluffs and that, but like from a hazard standpoint, are you just closing it because it's not basically our beach anymore? Or do you actually feel that there is legitimate public safety with that road? Because the road is unchanged for the decades that I've been there, and I'm just curious to see why we couldn't even at least allow it to be walked, or I understand from like a no winter maintenance or not able to have traffic down there, but usually when we're closing these types of accesses to the water, although it's not a municipal beach, there is some consultation, but this is just kind of coming to a report to council. So just curious if there is any abilities for it to be at least allowed to be walked, or a bike down there. If it's just going to be closed completely, you go down there, you're trespassing. Like, that's the kind of discrepancy I'm looking from. What does closed exactly mean?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think there's a couple questions there. One, we don't have a property quite like this. We have lots of different roads that end at the bluff. And we've often, in South Kent, we've gone through a few over the years of my term where there's a path through the bush and the road ends, and we've put up guardrail, we've put up signing that this is not suitable for public access. Is there a way to totally prevent pedestrians out in this kind of rural setting? Probably not. You could build a huge barbed wire fence and they'll find a way around it. So that's not what we're proposing to close this. However, I think it's my due diligence as a professional engineer to tell you that that structure is not safe. When you say it's a narrow pathway, it is a narrow pathway. We have lots of roads that are narrow, but this one is adjacent to a 100-foot bluff down to rocks. I have personally witnessed people doing a 17-point turn to get around to illegally dump cement and garbage over the hill with their back wheels of their pickup truck on the edge of the bluff. Another challenge I have as the Director of Public Works and as an engineer is that if council says that we should keep this access open, you're directing me to maintain that. And so the only way to maintain it is I've watched my grader operators have to back a 40-foot grader down that hill so that they can grade and maintain that roadway, because we get complaints that it's, pothole or washed out. I've seen, if you go on Google Maps, I do have some photos if anyone's curious. You can see people have been doing donuts on ATVs on the hill. The tracks are clearly seen on the roadway. It is really, really unsafe to maintain. To put it into a state of something that I believe would be safe to maintain, say you could put a guardrail where there's no way to, how would you put a guardrail in the hill and make it stable? The Zuzak study recommended that for these type of infrastructures that came before council, the retreat is the best asset management option for these assets. And I do not know the extent one would have to go to make that structure safe. So my duty is to recommend to you to uphold my duties as paramount to the public. And so I'm here before you to say I do not think that asset should be open as a public beach access.
Okay, so I guess that means for any type of traffic whatsoever then, is that what you're saying? I understand from a maintenance perspective, from a road perspective, but does that mean zero? You can't, like you said, you can't put up a barbed wire fence, or you're not going to, but so if people are walking down there, that's not going to be permitted any longer.
That's not the plan with this proposal.
Councillor Anderson.
My questions have been answered. Thanks.
Any other questions? Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Through you, so does that mean there's going to be no foot traffic allowed? Or, because we got the same situation on Hill Road, and they still walk down it. We barricaded up. We went through the fight when they barricaded it. Public didn't think they should do it, but they've done it. Now they still walk down there and use the beach, but it's basically the same road as what's up there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the question. So it's very similar to Hill Road. Similar in where the right-of-way would end under this proposal, not the way it is currently. And I cannot recommend that this is a suitable public access. If council wishes to keep it open as a public access, it needs to be maintained. And I think that is one of the big challenges with this piece of property. And so we're aware, you can see the pathway on Hill Road that goes down to the water. I also don't think that's safe. We've signed it. We do not recommend it. Can we stop everybody? No. If I receive a complaint from the member of the public, I'll pass that on to CK Police. That's my recommendation that I think the municipality should be following.
Seeing no other questions, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor McGrail?
Yes.
Councillor Finn?
Yes.
And Councillor Allen?
Yes.
All votes are in. Motion passes 13-5. Next, we have 21B, update on the proposed changes to leaf and yard waste collection.
Councillor Wright and Councillor Harrigan, can I get you to put this on the floor, please?
I'll move it.
I will second it.
Councillor Wright, floor is yours.
Yes, I just had one question. I looked the proposal over. The paper bags is great because the town workers won't have to empty the bags out. They can put them right in the grinder. But I just had one question. Is it going to affect the leaf back truck in any way at all by going to paper bags?
Thank you, Representative Mayor. Hoda, Manager Waste Management. Councillor, this report will recommend only paper bag mandate application. Any changes to the levels of service in Town or other communities that receive curbside will come to council as a package with the entire organics diversion program. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other questions, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor Finn? Councillor Allen?
And Councillor
McGrail?
Yes.
All votes are in, and motion passes 17-0. Next is 21C, Field of Dreams Baseball Project.
Councillor Crew and Councillor Allen, can I get you to put this on the floor, please?
So moved.
Happy to second.
Councillor Crew, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I just want to just talk a little bit about, and shortly, because I know there's a game on tonight. This project is has been spearheaded by the Chatham-Kent Sports Hall of Fame and their partners. They recognize the need for that additional large regulation size field because of the growth of baseball in our community. And it's no surprise, the reports that we've had tonight saying that, you know, our population is growing and everything. So this is no surprise that we need this. But what is really cool is to have an organization that put together this group of people with this passion to fundraise this large amount of money to make this happen in our community. So that I just want to talk a little bit about the diverse field that they're looking at. The Challenger athletic field is not just for baseball. They will be able to have access to soccer, different types of things on that field. It's not just going to be a field that's only baseball for those athletes who want to use that. It's going to be fully accessible, and it's going to be barrier-free for our community, which we, at this point, do not have in our community. And one thing that I don't know if anyone else has noticed this, but I was at a baseball game on Friday night, my first Barnstormers game, which was very exciting in our community to see this. And this is the other part of the growth of baseball that's spearheaded this need. But as I drove down Tweedsmuir Ave, the really interesting thing, it starts with our beautiful Fergie Field and goes all the way down. And if you keep going down Tweedsmuir, there's so many different baseball diamonds all the way down to the Chatham Minor Girls, the Golden Eagles diamond. So there's baseball all along that street. So for them to make this recommendation for this particular area is, it was really not even part of that decision, but because of the synergies they will get from that field. It's not about pushing out soccer. There will be plenty of time. It's going to take a minute to raise this money. There's going to be plenty of time to look where for places that we can develop other soccer pitches and just to reorganize and learn about what are the needs of soccer in our community and have time to get the master plan and everything together. So I don't have any questions. I just want to ask you to support this going forward. It is one of those community municipal partnerships where we get those large ticket items in our community, and we as a council could not afford to simply say let's throw $3 or $4 million into this and get it done. But if we have community partners who want to step up and make this happen, we should be thanking our lucky stars for having those folks in our community. I may have a comment after Mayor, but not right now. I don't want to get in the way of that game.
Councillor Allen, followed by Councillor Finn.
Yeah, just want to echo Councillor Crew's comments. The two user groups between the Chatham-Kent Sports Hall of Fame and the Chatham Minor Baseball, super passionate about this. To me, it's like a no-brainer. You're looking at adding, large-scale tournaments to Chatham, which we haven't seen before in Chatham-Kent, I should say. So hosting provincials, chances of nationals, things like that, brings in a lot of different players, a lot of different parents, supports local economy. It's very, very awesome, very positive thing to be a part of, and hopefully we can support this tonight.
Councillor Finn, followed by Councillor Story.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do commend and thank the people that brought the report forward and to the people that are wanting to fundraise for this. My question is, if we dedicate these fields to the soccer and the Barnstormers require an expansion of their field, what happens then? If somebody could answer that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Rob Pollock, Director of Parks, Fleet, and Facilities. So through this design, we would also look at the current field. If there's any adjustments, we'd work with those user groups and come back with a plan for that whole area.
Would it not be smart before dedicating this area, which may, if an expansion at Fergie Jenkins Field is required, preventing the ballpark to be put beside it, would it not be wise to wait to see if in fact that expansion is going to occur?
Can you repeat the question? Sorry, just one more time. Yeah.
No, there's a need for a second men's ball diamond. I have no problem with that. My problem is dedicating a stadium soccer, which soccer is big in this community. We have an entire area in behind the courthouse dedicated just for the young people. We have new ones on Kyle Drive. We have them out at St. Clair College. We're looking 4 years down the road before one can be built if these are removed. My problem is if we start to work on this and all of a sudden the Barnstormers say, well, we need an expansion of our area. What happens then to the ball diamond that we have now displaced a soccer teams from and possibly another ball diamond from? Because that will then, if you move Fergie Jenkins Park over, you then move this ball diamond over, you're now encroaching onto Memorial Arena. It just doesn't make sense until we know for sure if the Barnstormers are going to need an expansion.
Thanks for repeating the question. Now that I fully understand it, so the IBLT and the Barnstormers haven't indicated that they want any expansion further than what they can at the current Fergie field. So this would be another field right next to it, and the Barnstormers, they may in the future want some expansions to more seats or other things, but they're not looking, they haven't indicated that they want to move from the field that they're at this year.
If this other diamond goes in there, you're going to be able to accommodate seating for the Barnstormers if 2 years down the road they say, we need more seating?
Yes, through this design, we would also work with them to make sure any future improvements to the other field, we would accommodate at the same time in the same design to make sure that additional seating, if that displays, where the pitchers warm up or something else, we would include that into this design to ensure both fields would accommodate all the uses.
And what is the time?
Mr. Mayor, if I could just maybe interject here. Really, the recommendation before you tonight is not final approval of this site. The recommendation before you is to identify this as a preferred location, and then we would actually undertake the design work that's been indicated, and then come back to council for final approval. So there's still a number of steps before we finalize what this site would look like.
Money if we don't know for sure after partway through a season whether the Barnstormers are going to want an expansion. Because once this work starts, I can't see there being any room for an expansion on the field. So it's a waste of money then. And the fact, have you located any fields, like what's the timeline for this, that we're looking at for this to be built?
Currently, there isn't a set time frame. We would just be getting a design, so a landscape design, bringing that back to council so we could see what that could look like. And at that same time, it would be voted on if, we wanted to go forward with that design and the location. And then, there'd be fundraising efforts and other things like that. So it's not an immediate thing, and we'd be coming back to council for that approval.
A friendly amendment that nothing starts to take place with regards to this field until appropriate fields, replacement fields for the soccer are found, and that way there is no interruption in their field time. Because like I said, I do know they are used out there. And you lose those 3 soccer fields and it will be missed.
Sorry, I believe inherently we're gonna come back with a report. Nothing's gonna happen until we approve it. We're gonna look at it and they're gonna say all those questions. So at that point, they can answer the question to say if this is gonna be displaced, where are we gonna put it? So right now, there's a lot of questions, but this is gonna answer those questions and nothing will happen until we approve it at council.
I think there is a need for another ball diamond. I can't approve it as it sits right now. There's too many unanswered questions for me. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Story, followed by Councillor Doyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for this report. And Ian, as well as Edward, I really appreciate seeing this because I am, especially tonight, when we've been talking about accessibility, I am thrilled to see an accessible sport and recreation option being considered for Chatham-Kent. So that is great news. I do have a couple of questions. A few might be purely procedural. For number 1, is this a boilerplate type of motion? I'm not sure, maybe I haven't seen a motion like this too often. So do we need to authorize this group to fundraise for capital costs, regardless of the location? It sounds like ultimately there will be a location chosen. Do they need us to authorize them to do that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it's our common practice when someone's going to invest in our recreational assets to bring that to council to get your support for them to fundraise for that particular project. So yes, we would bring this normally to council.
Okay, so that's standard practice. Okay, that's helpful. I think where I do have a little bit of a concern on just the issues that the Soccer Association has raised with us that I don't feel we have had a chance to review yet. So full disclosure, I think choosing a preferred location at this time is a bit premature. I fully support the project, but I do think I'm a little uncomfortable with number 2 being going ahead with choosing to go with a discussion of a preferred location before we have had a chance to hear from other constituents. We do have the soccer league folks that have reached out to us, and they have close to, it sounds like 2,000 players this year, and it's growing. So I think they have they do have a right to have their voices heard with some feedback. I worry that this potentially pits different athletic groups in our community, different leagues against each other. So I worry that if we're taking away the soccer fields, that could potentially create some conflict there. And I do think that there is a way to avoid that, and that would be to include this. You do reference it in the report that there is a Parks and Recreation Master Plan that Council has approved, and there is work already being done that would include this as part of that, instead of sort of piecemealing it out. So I'm wondering why we wouldn't include this project as part of that work that's already underway by the team, to use a sports analogy.
So this was a motion by council for us to reach out to the committee to find their preferred location, and then we're just following back with council. This is their preferred location, and yes, we are conducting our Parks and Rec Master Plan, but we're just falling back on the council motion indicating where they preferred it to be. So, and to your other point of the soccer organizations, through this approach, we would go out and reach out to them. But at this point, for the council motion, we wanted to let you know what the committee came up with.
Sure, I think that makes sense. And so you're doing what we asked you to, which is good. I think to get to the group, the Sports Hall of Fame and the group that you mentioned, I think there's some here tonight, and I thank you for attending. They have identified that as their preferred location, which I think they have obviously every right to do that, but there are other groups I believe should have that opportunity as well to say whether or not there's any feedback on that. So I would be happy to make a motion or an amendment to include this or refer this back to the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, which is still a vote in my mind in support of exploring this project, but in the context of the bigger picture that we're already looking at. Just with the consultation piece, you know, there's folks like the Accessibility Committee, the Kiwanis Club of Chatham-Kent who helped build those fields, the Chatham Youth Soccer Association. I think, doesn't mean that they can't move elsewhere, but I do think it seems reasonable that they would be consulted before we go with a preferred location. So I would not be in favor of this motion as it is written right now, but I do want to reiterate, I am thrilled to see more attention and priority given to more inclusive sports and recreation opportunities, and in principle, I fully support this and would like to see it become a reality. But as a concerned resident has shared with me today, that it does come across to some in the community that this is sort of taking from Peter to pay Paul in terms of juggling different sports facilities. We're facing incredible budget pressures that we have learned about in the last few days. We're facing a lot of tough choices and a lot of very worthy requests. And I think in the interest of fairness to all users of this site, we should follow the process underway that Council has approved with the Parks and Rec Master Plan, which includes a consultation, and I think this decision to choose a preferred site right now is premature. So I thank you for that opportunity to share my feedback.
Councillor Doyle, followed by Councillor McGrail.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Thank you very much for the report. It is definitely exactly what we asked you to do. So thank you. And then, for my understanding, basically you went out to the Field of Dreams Committee, which consisted of the Hall of Fame and the there's people in the baseball. There's a baseball committee as well. And you asked them where they wanted to put the field. Obviously, they said right next door to our current one, which makes sense for them. But then, so soccer associations weren't talked to. Is that correct?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So yeah, what we reviewed parcels in Chatham. So we didn't just go to them and ask which ones they wanted. We reviewed a lot of different parcels with them. One of the challenges that I've mentioned to different councillors, and I think probably a couple times here before, is a lot of our park parcels already have recreational assets on them. So there wasn't too many options to actually go forward with. And yeah, it's right next to Fergie Jenkins Park, so that was one of their main options. So,
okay.
But yeah, we would have to reach out to more of the user groups that were mentioned tonight if we were going to move forward with this as well. So
okay, no, I understand that completely. So I think we're kind of rushing this a little bit. We haven't talked to as many user groups as we should. The master plan is in the works, and this would obviously be part of the master plan already. So to kind of jump ahead by, say, a year or so and put this where it is, and us approve to spend $35,000 to design a park there, which in the layout in the agenda seems a little bit smaller than our current park. And our current park, the right outfield is not normal shaped for a ball diamond. So I wouldn't want to put two oddly shaped ball diamonds right next to each other as our main diamonds. So to me, and I do have I will not be supporting this, and I do have a motion written to basically still allow the Field of Dreams Committee to be authorized to fundraise, because it is going to take some time to fundraise. They're probably not going to be able to fundraise the amount of money it's going to take to build a diamond within a year. And if the master plan is done within that year, then they have all the time that they need to fundraise. And then that way we have potentially maybe even a better spot to put this in the master plan. And it might even come back to saying that we put it in this spot. But at least that way, everything gets to be looked at in the master plan. And we're not just saying, hey, this is where they want to put it, so we're going to put it here. So I guess I would, I'll be making a motion to, similar to what Allison was saying, but allow them to still fundraise while we are working on the master plan, and then let it come out in the master plan like it should. Thank you.
Councillor McGrail, followed by Councillor B. McGregor.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Caniff. My first question is just process. So if this was approved tonight, and in number 3 it says, be referred to the 2025 budget update. How does that affect our budget and where it falls? As I'm saying is, because if this is a council priority, does it supersede a necessity that needs to be done? Could it? When it comes to budget and it's everything's numbered as a project.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. This is being referred to the 2025 budget along with a long list of other requests. Ultimately, it'll be in council's hands in November about whether this project or other projects get funded or not, and whether that's funded in the, there'll be recommendations from administrations, but whether that's funded in the capital budget or as a one-off in the operating budget from a reserve or what the choices are. But number 3 is simply referring it to the budget process for council to consider at that time.
So this wouldn't, this would not push it up the list because we say bring it to the budget. Administration will still look at all the projects and rank accordingly as in need.
Correct. And if council at that time could make it a priority or decide not to fund it and put it off to the 2026 budget for consideration or further.
Thank you. I do think number 3 is a little early because we have, not done that community consultation. So to perform design work, which is, I believe, very unique to the location that you agree upon to put this diamond, is way too early to be doing that. Secondly, I see this as, a nice thing to have. I'm really, in light of an email we got this past week, I'm looking at these requests and I'm really trying to figure out which ones, the needs, what we have to do, what we're legislated to do, and fulfill those, because we are looking at a very different, tax rate, even from, this previous year that was hard to swallow. So in all of that, that's why I will not be supporting this. Thank you.
Councillor B. McGregor, followed by Councillor Harrigan.
Thank you. I admit I came in tonight with no questions about this report. I thought it was very clear what we're discussing and really clear how we got there. I mean, we've got a very significant tenant of a baseball diamond now in Chatham, in Chatham-Kent, and we have user groups that are in pretty significant need of increasing our recreational infrastructure, which is a really good news story, and something that has happened in other communities. I'm sure we're going to need to address the baseball situation in Blenheim in the near future. And it's great that we're seeing this usage in sports fields. I think it's also really important to note that, while we might have a Parks and Recreation master plan, we also have to efficiently and effectively manage assets as usage changes in real time. And I think this is a way to do that with, fortunately, tremendous support from the community. And I think that in no way does this report or recommendation immediately put soccer usage at risk. We have other fields that are developing in our community, and I'm confident, sitting around the council table, that when this comes back, the plan will include how we facilitate usage of soccer fields in our community and what that might look like when this move happens. At the end of the day, these are public facilities on public lands that we're trying to best manage to offer opportunities to really important user groups. And I don't think it's by any means a nice to have. It's a must have. Youth sports and sports are really important to communities. We need places to host those. So as the community grows, we're going to face these challenges again, and sometimes we're going to convert parks or old school properties. That's the way growth happens and the way growth looks. And I think there's still lots of opportunity to have meaningful consultation with other user groups. And, maybe when you're a little more seasoned and read this report, it seems apparent that that's the next steps and what will happen. And I think maybe it's unfortunate that wasn't picked up in the community. So I don't have a concern going forward with the sustainability of multiple youth sports in our community and how they'll use the community assets. So I'm excited to see this come forward. I'm excited to support these recommendations. I'm very thankful to the group that will be working hard to raise money for this community asset. Thank you.
Councillor Harrigan, followed by Councillor Juvenville.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff, and I just wanted to acknowledge for members of the public that council received an email from the Chatham Youth Soccer Organization that runs locally. So some of the references, it wasn't a formal deputation, but it was a letter that we received. So some of those soccer references specifically, I think, are to that. First, I have a question through the mayor. Can we confirm that Chatham soccer programs are, like, they rent our soccer fields, like their user agreements with Chatham Soccer? Like, they don't own any of our fields or assets, they rent them like the Minor Hockey Association rents arenas, as an example.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. Yes, that's true.
Okay. And so, well, I think it's important that we have really positive relationships with those user groups, and there's conversations that we have about that. I want to point out that the municipality is not the only organization in Chatham-Kent that rents soccer fields. I'm very privileged to be on a board of Tilbury and our soccer organization. 506 kids registered to play soccer this year. There are 0 municipal soccer fields in Tilbury. We rent from the school board at a very reasonable cost, and we have a great relationship with the school board, and there are lots of excellent soccer pitches also across the community of Chatham, where if, in a worst case scenario, we wouldn't have the asset of the soccer fields kind of readied in the other developments we're doing for soccer, there are other places and spaces that these organizations can look to provide growing programming needs. And I imagine even if we didn't have this conversation, they could be looking to the school board for growing soccer pitches, because soccer is becoming a more popular sport. But we have 0 accessible baseball fields for kids in Chatham-Kent. So we can't rent from school boards. We can't find other places. I've seen some of these. There's a Miracle League that runs out of Amherstburg. It's a beautiful facility, and I've been privileged to watch some of the sports activities that take place. And it is nothing more than delightful to see children with different needs or accessible needs be able to participate and play in sports that are so popularized in the culture that we live in today, and especially even more so popularized in Chatham-Kent with the introduction of more professional baseball happening. So I just think that we have some momentum that is being asked for council support. We have a fundraising opportunity here. Fundraising often comes with those really great signs that say, hey, look at this, could be the future site of this, and here's our goal. And we need to put some momentum behind that. When it comes to important user groups, like the user groups that have sent us an email, I absolutely think they should be engaged in that process. But we're not changing the pitch for tomorrow, and we're not even likely going to be changing the soccer pitch for next season. So there's lots of time to have that engagement. And I fear that some of the conversation we're having now around making sure that there's stakeholders and thinking about the budget could be dampening what I believe is really important and an important part of this. And that's the momentum from the community to fundraise for a really important asset, and the commitment to accessible spaces and places for everyone in Chatham-Kent to enjoy healthy development and activities such as sports. Thank you.
Councillor Juvenville, followed by Councillor Scotchy.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I'm going to echo Councillor Finn, Doyle, and Story that I support this fully. I belong to a youth sports organization, so I fully support the growth of youth sports in our municipality. My stumbling block is sacrificing one youth sport to accommodate another. So taking away a soccer field, and I don't think we had proper consultation with the Chatham Youth Soccer Association. I feel that we maybe didn't go about it the right way. So while I support funding it and allowing them to fundraise, I just think we need to hold off on choosing that specific location for the Field of Dreams. Thank you.
Councillor Scotchy.
Just a couple of brief comments, Mayor Caniff. Mr. Pollock, has anything regarding soccer been identified at the potential of Bear Line Park?
So
I know it's really new, and I kind of know the answer already, but I just wanted to.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the proposed design that was brought to council, there was a soccer field / rugby pitch on that.
Thank you. I wanted to make sure that that was out there publicly. And my last comment, I actually, surprisingly to probably everybody here, I wasn't going to speak at all on this one, but I think that I agree with what Councillor Story said and what Councillor Doyle has said as well. But one thing that I think that I kind of changed my perspective on is the fact that we're getting hung up on $35,000 for the new baseball diamonds and future requirements at Fergie Jenkins Field. If anybody's been to that field recently, just look around and see how many community partnerships have invested in that field and what would be there, what wouldn't be there if it was just a municipal asset. So my comment is, because the challenging aspects we have in the budget and because the challenging components that we are facing, we should empower, these committees to do as much as possible to improve our municipal assets. And I think the last thing that we should be doing as council is saying that, basically punting something down the road when we have the opportunity for potential hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to be injected into a recreational amenity at no cost to the taxpayer. Maybe some name rights, maybe some, business associated with that, but that's all good for our community. So where I was very much on the other side of this just a few minutes ago, I think it's extremely important that we recognize the cost savings to the municipality, allowing people to invest in our community and invest in our recreational components. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple of comments. I don't see any other speakers, then I'll go to to Councillor Crew. I had a couple of quick questions. What is the timing of the master plan, recreation plan?
So it'll be finalized mid of 2025. So about 1 year from now, it'll be finalized.
So the concept here is we'd have to put everything on hold for a year till we come up with something. That's the discussion around the table. Okay, the design work. So as you design the field, I realize that the design is specifically for that. Can that design be taken and applied to other locations if for whatever reason something came along that said we found a perfect site? Could we reuse that, maybe modify it some, but we'd have a lot of the...
Yeah, like you indicated, it might have to be modified some because this would be for that location, but in general, we would be able to use it somewhere else and modify it.
So if we're going to do this design, then we need to spend this money at some point. So we could use it, whether it's a year from now, 5 years from now, whatever happens, but it's not, we're not throwing away $35,000 here.
We could reuse the design work to the most part with some modifications in the future too as well.
Because I guess the big piece here, if we didn't have a community group stepping up and saying, we're going to raise $2.5 million to put towards this. If it was just a discussion of a new ballpark, I would agree with all the discussion. We have to look at the big picture and everything, but when we're looking at a group ready to raise $2.5 million to cover the cost of this amazing asset, and we're saying we need this asset, and it's going to cost us 35 grand, which we can use at other alternatives as we move forward, I think, that does a disservice to the people that are ready to step up and raise the money. So this is, I'll quote Councillor Allen, this is a no-brainer as far as if somebody's going to go raise $2.5 million for us, we got to support them. Because if we don't support them tonight, they're going to say, wow, Chatham-Kent really doesn't want to support this, and the momentum that we've got going right now could very well disappear. So we have to praise our community when they step up to do this. So I'm obviously going to support this. Councillor Crew?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I'm just kind of stunned that we're kind of really making it difficult for community partners to support us and help us with these assets in our community. We'd have just a dust diamond with nothing. So I just want to talk a little bit. So number one is just saying that the Field of Dreams Committee can go raise funds. They don't have a timeline because they don't know how long it's going to take. It may take a year, it may take 6 months if they're lucky, but it's going to probably take, it's $2.5 million. So that will take a little bit of time. The Soccer Association, all of this consultation will take place. If we waited for a master plan to start and do everything, Bear Line wouldn't be started. that community group wouldn't be there. We wouldn't have them step up and do all of this stuff out there. Taylor Park project, which a lot of you are partners with, that wouldn't have happened, and it's on the go. Do we just sit back and sit on our hands for another year and a half waiting for someone to say, yes, this is what we need? What we do need is to get this started. What we need to do is start being able to work and raise this money in the community. Let this group do their work and let them help us get assets in our community that other people talk about. I remember when Fergie Field was built with partnerships and everything, and all of those partners that brought it together. And I was at some event in Windsor, not related to anything at all, and I'm just sitting there and I heard conversations start. People were talking about Fergie Field and what a gem we had here in Chatham. They said, you wouldn't believe the park they got. And then I spoke up and said, that was built by the community. So this is what we need to do. This is how we get these good things. I want you to understand that this is the preferred location. It's not the done deal. This all has to come back. This is still we're gonna do the consultation. We're gonna do all of that work. This is not punting away soccer fields to make a nice ball diamond. This is making these assets in our community valuable for all of our community. Thank you, Councillor Harrigan, for pointing out the other places that we can access those assets. The $35,000, that's going to go to budget, and that's if we still need to raise that. Maybe that might come from somewhere else. I don't know. But that's still a discussion to have at budget. If you don't want to do it then, don't do it. Don't have a budget discussion here at the council table. That's as simple as that. I'm asking you to support this. We want people to participate, support, and when they're stepping up to the plate to raise this money for us in our community. You like that pun, Michael? I saw you smile. We need to embrace them, support them, and encourage them, not discourage them. I'm just kind of amazed that we're not saying, yes, this is where we're going to do it. This is the preferred location, not the location. And the master plan is going to happen. We definitely shouldn't be sitting on our hands hoping that something comes on a piece of paper in a year and a half, and we just hope that this group is going to stand by and wait till we decide, oh, it's okay today. Let's, we don't want to work on this with you. Please support this. I don't know what other user groups would come forward when we're giving them such a difficult time to give us $2.5 million. Thank you.
With that, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor Allen?
Yes.
Councillor Finn?
No.
Councillor McGrail?
No.
Motion passes 12-6. Next, we are on to 21F, Vaughan Ayers Cultural Center and Jean Gordon Hall lease agreement.
Councillor Hall and Councillor C. McGregor. Actually, Councillor Hall.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Caniff. I just got to pull it up here. I have a slightly different motion than what's in the report, but I move recommendation 1 as is. The General Manager of Infrastructure and Engineering Services and the clerk be authorized to execute the lease agreement extension between the municipality and the Wallace-Bergen District Historical Society for a length of 5 years, with the terms of the lease drafted to be in line with similar facility lease standards with community groups as described in the report, such terms to be satisfactory to the Director of Legal Services. And recommendation number 2, option 1 of the life safety study recommending status quo of the facility be referred back to administration for further review. Mayor Ken, if I get a seconder, I have a few comments. Thanks.
Councillor C. McGregor.
Certainly.
Councillor Hall, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Thanks to Rob also for the report. Also, I think Council all received a letter earlier today from Henry Van Haren. He's the president of the Wallaceburg Museum. He actually talked about this year being the 40th anniversary of the museum in Wallaceburg, sent invites to everybody. Encourage everyone to go check that out. And actually, this milestone is going to be celebrated on Saturday at the museum with a special event. So check out the museum online for details. Also, I know Councillor C. McGregor spoke with Henry over the weekend, and their board is very happy to move forward with the lease extension, the first portion of this motion. So I appreciate all the work that went into this. The second piece of the report, and the reason Councillor C. McGregor and I are hoping to defer the second recommendation back to staff, I think there just needs to be a little bit more review by administration on this before we approve any status quo options in regards to the theater at the museum, or the former theater, I guess, which could be the long-term answer, but I just don't think we have all the answers yet. Council will recall that we recently completed a secondary plan for the south side of Wallaceburg where the museum is located, and it really touched on arts and culture and the potential for theater space in this part of Wallaceburg. So I'd like to see some further consultation, not just with the museum board, but other stakeholders in the community, maybe the Arts Council, other potential theater hosts, or just people that are interested, community groups with experience and interest in the arts. Also, lastly, I'd like administration to take a little bit more of a comprehensive approach in terms of who is at the table from staff, taking into consideration how a theater in Wallaceburg impacts tourism, community development, economic development, planning, and as I mentioned earlier, some of the great work that we received through the secondary plan process. So thank you, Mayor Caniff, and I hope for council's support tonight.
Councillor C. McGregor?
Thank you, and through the mayor. And yes, I did have the opportunity to have some good in-depth conversation with Mr. Van Haren and the museum. And they've been working kind of towards this for a long time. There's been a lot of setbacks that have taken place over the years in getting the safety life study completed and the limitations that have been placed upon them, which has not been allowing them to help raise funds to help support the funding of the building. They know that there's a long way to go. They've got a very interested board of directors that would like to have more information and more direction, and I think by sending it back with the recommendations Councillor Hall has brought forward would give the opportunity to have that more in-depth conversation with the Historical Society and within the community. At this point, we really do not have a proper venue for arts and culture to take place within our community, and so it's been difficult in that manner for the groups that have been doing little things here and there, and or not even little things. Some are very big, like our Wallaceburg Concert Band, and so it has been difficult being, and for them, seasonal, they've been doing it outdoors within our community. So I really think that it would help our community, and I hope that everybody can support the need that I think we have in our community to have more in-depth information and to be able to work with this group and with community to determine where arts and culture can go for the future in Wallaceburg. Thanks.
Councillor Sakachi?
Just one question about the ending of the number 2. Is that, Edward, does that essentially mean to the asset management plan for further review? Is that a separate review than your team's already doing?
Thank you, through the mayor. I think I'm hearing two things here. One is to go back and have consultation with the community, look at it from a arts and culture perspective. Referring it back to the asset management plan would then put this project and sort of review it from the purpose of all of our other assets and facilities and where it stands in terms of priorities.
Okay, these are going separate, Mayor Caniff, is that correct? 1 and 2?
It wasn't requested at that point.
Yeah, I would request it to be 1 and 2, please. Thank you.
Item 1 and 2 we'll vote on separately. Seeing no other questions, we'll put vote starting with number 1. Yep. Can you just take some duct tape and cover up number 2?
Okay, so we're voting on just recommendation number 1 first. Councilor McGrail? Yeah. Councilor McGrail? She might have stepped away. Councilor Allen?
Yes.
Councilor Finn?
Yes.
And one more try, Councilor McGrail? Okay, all votes are in. Motion passes 17-0. Now we'll vote on the second recommendation. This is referring it back to administration. Councilor Allen?
Yes.
Councilor Finn?
Yes.
Councilor McGrail? All votes are in. Motion passes 15-2. Next, we're on to 21G, Traffic and Parking Bylaw Update for School Areas in the Community of Chatham.
Councilor Story and Councilor Finn, can I get you to put this on the floor, please?
Happy to move, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Story, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to ask a couple questions about this. I wanted to thank Edward and the team for the report on this update, because I think with the new schools opening and some schools closing, this is a good reminder about what we're looking at to keep our school zone safe, especially all the sidewalk and road users, especially pedestrians. This probably is one of the most common concerns I receive as a counselor, about concerns around school zones and the speed limits. So maybe I think it might be helpful to raise a little awareness about this, and perhaps a reminder to folks as we wrap up the summer and heading into the next school year in a couple of months. Is the 40-kilometer-an-hour speed limit applied in these areas 24/7, or only when school is in session?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That is really the best practice, to install them 24/7. While you may have children coming and going at certain times of the day, you have to remember these schools are also used for other things, like potentially the fields after school, the gyms, and really is the best practice then to keep it 24/7. It's also less confusing to drivers. You don't have to think about, well, when can I drive 50, when can I drive 40? It's a known area that you need to reduce your speed through.
Okay.
During all times of the day.
Great, thank you. What if we reduce that even more? For example, what if we considered 30 kilometers an hour with increases in certain school zones with a lot more kids in one area? Would we have that ability as a municipality to consider that as an option?
While we do have that ability underneath the Highway Traffic Act to reduce it down to 30, it's not something that we as staff would recommend. Going to 30 would be a bit unrealistic at this time. You need to condition the drivers out there in terms of these kind of locations. We're through the Road Safety Action Plan, we're rolling these out in different parts of the community. Need to have the community adjust to that. There are some cities, as my former municipality, that put all local roads down to 40, and that took quite a bit of education, and it does make an impact, but that's something that you do over time. Then they did drop their school zones to 30 eventually, but I would say to you that also needs to come with much heavier enforcement and potentially the application of automated speed enforcement. So we're not there yet. That is something we can look at through our Road Safety Action Plan in the future. But at this point in time, I would say that we need to take baby steps to moving in that direction.
Okay, that's fair. I know that's been raised with folks who have contacted us, that what our options might be. Can I focus on Mr. Soldo's conversation, please? Sorry. When you mentioned in the comments section there is a reference to a community safety zone, would you mind explaining a little more detail what that is?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the Highway Traffic Act, it allows municipalities to designate a part of a road or a street as a community safety zone, and that's where public safety is a special concern, as these locations here. So in a community safety zone, the fine of the offenses that may occur, like speeding and motorists failing to yield, is double. So that is really putting an emphasis on trying to change driver behavior through the enforcement aspect.
Okay, thanks. And last but not least, I know especially at the western end of McNaughton Ave, would there be opportunities in the future to consider extending these 40-kilometer-an-hour zones? For example, at Kyle and McNaughton, there is a new long-term care facility currently under construction next door to one that's already built, and that's a few hundred meters from St. Angela Merici and the St. Clair College campus. So when the long-term care homes closer to being open, would it be possible to look at extending that 40-kilometer-an-hour zone past the long-term care home to make that section a little more safer for seniors and families?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report is really trying to be proactive related to the schools. And as development occurs and there's locations where a community safety zone or a 40-kilometer-an-hour reduction would be applicable, we will look at that in a more proactive perspective.
Okay, thank you very much.
Seeing no other questions, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor Allen?
Yes.
Councillor Finn?
Yes.
Councillor McGrail?
Yes.
All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0. Lastly, we have 21I, motion by Councillor Allen regarding the inclusion of King Street, Chatham in the Transportation Master Plan.
Councillor Allen?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Do you want me to read the whole thing, or am I just my opinion here?
Just the pieces on the screen.
Sure. That as part of the Transportation Master Plan, staff reviewed the feasibility of converting portions of King Street in downtown Chatham to one-way and introducing angled parking, including undertaking consultation with the BIA, businesses, and public, and report back to council with recommendations, including the feasibility and financial implications.
Second, Councillor Sakatsu, you second this?
For discussion purposes, yes, Mayor Caniff.
Okay. Councillor Allen? Go ahead.
Yeah, so really this is just, like I said, just a review for staff to look at if it's even possible of doing in our downtown core. You look at places like Blenheim, who has the angled parking or one-way street in downtown Wallsburg. And one of the biggest complaints that I find we get when it comes to our local businesses, being a part of the BIA board, the local library board, is constantly about parking and being downtown, foot traffic and everything else and lack thereof. So what this will hopefully possibly do, especially with the talks of, the potential of the new community hub, parking is just very important. With the angled parking, hopefully this is one way we could possibly either double mount these spaces, just bring more people to our downtown core. Really, that's the gist of it.
Okay, Councillor Scott, do you want to comment anything?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Caniff. I just wanted to touch base briefly with Edward. Edward, when I know this exercise will just be included in part of the master plan, and this is all you hypothesizing at this point, but the potential to create a one-way street. I know a lot of communities are going the exact opposite way in regards to one-way streets. Would there not be a large cost associated with potentially maneuvering the downtown core to a one-way street?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. As part of the downtown master plan, we were planning to undertake a parking review, looking at spaces and how parking is distributed in the downtown. In terms of increasing parking along this street and going to one way, that is one potential avenue of doing that. But there are pros and cons to that concept. I would say it's best practice in the last 5 to 10 years to remove one-way streets. I personally removed a number of streets in my former municipality because it's they're not as safe, and it leads to speeding along those roadways. So I think we need to look at all of those factors when we're considering this potential move. What is the potential positives from a parking perspective, but are we having any unintended consequences if we do that? So that is really part of the review through the master plan.
Thank you, Edward. And I do respect that, although there's no cost associated with this, that time by staff is obviously extremely important. We have a lot of really high priority things we're working on. Just in closing, this is our busiest center in the Chatham-Kent. This is our busiest road, probably from a downtown perspective. And I did not hear anybody requesting for a one-way street. So, I mean, I just think that at this time, even though it's just an exercise, I'm really not sure why, no pun intended, we're going down this road when we have so many potential other critical aspects on there, and just won't be supporting it. Thank you.
Councillor Juneville?
Thank you, Mayor. I've asked some business owners on King if they feel there's a dire need for parallel parking or angle parking on King Street, and I was told no, and they went on to say that this may even hinder their businesses in the end. I believe it's been tried before on King, and I believe it failed. I've heard from people who live and shop in Blenheim where they have angled parking in the downtown core, and it was shared with me that it's a bit unsafe. They feel unsafe when they're backing up. I know it won't be a huge cost, but just the time and the cost associated with doing the review, I just don't feel the need is there right now to exercise this, so I will not be supporting it. Thank you.
Councillor Wright?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. On this study, I hope that Chief Keys can get involved with this and tell us how we're going to get ambulances and fire trucks down there. If we go one way, it's going to block the streets pretty heavy. And on the other side, if you got to get a tow truck down, you got to block the traffic at the far end and bring them up backwards. So then you got to have police there to block the street at any time a car breaks down. So there's a bunch of stuff that needs to be studied on this. Thank you.
Councillor Story?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do really appreciate Councillor Allen bringing this to our attention, because I think any consideration to improve our downtowns is really important, especially our largest downtown, which is in Chatham, which has certainly seen its share of challenges over the past several years. I do share some of Councillor Sakachi's concerns about prioritizing and our budget pressures, since we do need to look at every single dollar we're spending. I think this actually could put more barriers in front of our downtown business owners, and there are genuine concerns that have been shared with me from downtown businesses moving this forward. I think there was a cost associated with this on the motion. Is that correct, Edward? There was I think $15,000 cost on the motion form. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the $15,000 would then to not only look at it, but see what the infrastructure requirements are. So we have to do some design. So I believe that's where that $15,000 comes from.
Okay, thank you. After this was published in the media last week, I did receive a variety of calls from downtown merchants who were concerned about a couple of things. So I did agree to share this with them, since I hadn't had a chance to provide their feedback yet. There did seem to be some confusion as to the reason and the timing behind this motion. Every business owner that contacted me said that this was not something they were consulted on. They weren't in favor of one-ways, and mainly because they were really worried about this disruption to the street. They have, sort of looking back the last few years in downtown Chatham, they faced an extended road closure with the construction of an apartment building. They faced the closure of both bridges. They faced the extended disruption of the pandemic, and now they could be faced with more barriers. So there was genuine worry shared with me about moving this forward. In addition, this was also tried on Queen Street, and it basically destroyed most of that business district. There have also been at least 2 major comprehensive traffic studies looking at King Street, and none of those studies made any recommendations with respect to one-way streets in the downtown area. And it would, of course, affect all the streets linking up with King. So I think we could consider saving the staff time, saving that cost in light of our substantial budget pressures, and the timing I do find a bit puzzling, but based on the feedback that I've received so far, I'm not comfortable supporting creating another potential barrier to downtown businesses. So thank you very much.
Councillor Crew?
Thank you. Just to clarify, this is just a report to come back. This is not saying let's change the streets. This is just an information report. Am I reading this correct, Edward?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this wouldn't be an information report. This would be considered as part of the transportation master plan. So it's one of the things that we look at in the downtown. We're doing a parking strategy down there. We'd be looking at this potentially through that work and having the consultation done through the mobility master plan.
Okay. But we're still not asking you to do it. It's just part of the master plan and consulting with businesses and that's what I'm reading. Because we say things are in the master plan doesn't mean we do it.
That's correct. This would have to be identified as a project coming out of the transportation master plan, but this is not giving us direction to convert the roadway.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, Edward, that when you're doing the transportation master plan, you would be looking at this option anyway, would you not? To say, you look at it, whether you quickly dismissed it or not, but you would factor it into if you're trying to create more parking in downtown Chatham.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the parking strategy for downtown will look at how we can maximize and optimize parking downtown. Would this be an option? I'm not sure it would be, but if council so directs us, we will look at that.
Yeah, I was just trying to discern that as part of this plan, you're going to be looking at it and trying to come up with the best solution. So if you're discounting it now and saying we don't think it is, I'd like to see the option explored. But on the flip side, if you're saying out of the gates that it's not going to make a whole lot of sense to we spend 15 grand in time, that I originally was going to kind of supported this, but as I'm hearing this and Edward hearing you saying no, that it doesn't make sense to go one way and to do that, that kind of flips me the other way a bit.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would say that most municipalities are going away from one-way streets because they're not as safe as a two-way street, and there's a lot of other reasons. So this probably wasn't top of mind for us to consider if we were going to be looking at parking in the downtown.
Okay, thanks. With that, see no other questions, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor McGrail?
No.
Councillor Finn?
No.
Councillor Allen?
Yes.
All votes are in. Motion is defeated, 6-12.
We will go to notice of motion. Councillor Wright, then Councillor Hall, then Councillor Juvenville.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I, Councillor John Wright, will bring this motion forward at the next council meeting for consideration and to be voted on. Be it resolved that staff conduct a road safety assessment at the intersection of Ridgeline and Kent Bridge Road and report back to council with recommendations. Thank you.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you. I, Councillor Aaron Hall, hereby provide notice that I will bring forward the following motion at the August 12th, 2024 council meeting for discussion and voting. Whereas a healthy and safe community is an area of strategic focus in CK Plan 2035, and whereas planning and advancing downtown renewal projects is included in the term priorities for our current term of council, and whereas a CCTV project for downtown Wallaceburg was recently approved by council, and whereas a recent crime prevention through environmental design or CPTED audit completed in downtown Wallaceburg highlighted the need for increased lighting over the sidewalks, and whereas the previously approved streetlight replacement project for downtown Wallaceburg has experienced delays due to budget constraints, therefore be it resolved that 1, council directs staff to explore including additional lighting over the downtown Wallsburg sidewalks as part of the streetlight replacement project. And 2, all details, including estimated costs and timing, be brought back to council as soon as possible for discussion and voting. Thank you.
Councillor Juvenville.
Thank you, Mayor. I, Councillor Rhonda Jubinville, provide notice that I will bring the following motion forward at our next meeting for discussion and voting. Whereas the Independent Electrical System Operator, the otherwise known as the IESO, has proposed to move forward with 3 RFPs where new wind turbine projects can receive and contract from the IESO, and whereas people living near existing wind turbines report considerable impact on their lives due to noise, health, and clean water risks, along with other emissions and issues caused from the wind turbines, and whereas there are gaps in the enforcement of key terms of the renewable energy approvals governing existing projects relative to noise standards and resolution of complaints, and whereas Chatham-Kent has not received a response from their letter to the Ministry of Health dated May 2023 regarding the all-hazard investigation, and whereas municipal approval is required to locate one of these projects in the municipality of Chatham-Kent, therefore be it resolved that Chatham-Kent Council does not support the establishment of any new wind turbine projects within the municipality, and that the IESO be directed to advise potential applicants of this resolution. Thank you.
Closed session reports. Councillor Crew.
Council directed administration on proposed acquisition of land by the municipality regarding a property in Wheatley, Section 239-2C, the Municipal Act, and council received information explicitly supplied in confidence to the municipality by Canada, a province, or a territory, or a crown agency, a trade secret, or scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relations information supplied in confidence to the municipality or a local board, which, if disclosed, could reasonably be expected to prejudice significantly the competitive position or interference significantly with the contractual or other negotiations of a person, group of persons, or organization, and a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiation carried on by the municipality regarding economic development initiatives, Section 239-2H, I, and K of the Municipal Act 2001. Education and training of members regarding de-escalation training, Section 239-3.1 of the Municipal Act. I so move.
Councillor Anderson, can you second it shorter than that?
I will second that.
All right. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor McGrail?
Yes.
Councillor Finn?
Yes.
And Councillor Allen?
Yes.
All votes are in. Motion passes 18-0.
We have communication items. Councillor Juvenville, you wanted to discuss item 3A.
Thank you, Mayor. Council received word that the Ontario Big City Mayors had a fruitful and productive meeting last Friday. They discussed key priorities, including mental health, addictions, and the homeless crisis. A few constituents have reached out to me with questions and concerns, so I respectfully am asking the Mayor, in honor of transparency, to speak briefly about the Ontario Big City Mayor event and why a privately owned location was used instead of a municipally owned location. And they just want clarification that the event was completely paid for by the OBCM and the attendees' fees. Thank you.
Yes, so I'll start with, yes, the OBCM meeting was paid for totally by the OBCM. So but we all pay fees into it. They go between each community. So community will say, we'd be happy to have you come down. So that's I said, we'd love to have you come down to Chatham-Kent. So they said, wonderful. So they pay all the fees of coming in. They're the ones that decide. We gave them various locations and we said, would you like, we gave the various plates and they chose that. And they contracted separately with that organization, so that's what happened.
Thank you.
Okay, can I get a seconder for that? Councillor Crew?
I'll second it.
Any other questions? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Councillor Jubenville and Councillor Crew, can I get you to move the rest of the communication items?
I so move.
Second.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Non-agenda business. Councillor Story.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got a comment and then two separate questions. I wanted to first recognize the passing of George Denise. He was a lifelong farmer in the former Raleigh and Chatham townships and was a skilled craftsman and fabricator. If you knew him, you knew he was a man of integrity and empathy. And he was self-educated and well respected by his peers for his involvement, his level of preparedness and common sense for the issues at hand on boards in the various vegetable and grain industries, and during his years, most notably to us around this table, as a township councillor, deputy reeve, and the last reeve of the former Raleigh Township, for his efforts in forming some of the first crop insurance programs and other initiatives. He was inducted into the Kent Agriculture Hall of Fame, which I know he was very proud of. I got to know George when I worked as a summer student for Harwich Township, which is a long time ago now, and George was always so kind, so generous with his knowledge, always had a smile for everybody, and it was really clear how much he cared for his community as a whole and those who resided in it. His work in the pre-amalgamation days to ensure a fair and equitable process for all, especially what was a kind of tumultuous time, should never be forgotten. So I wanted to recognize him around the horseshoe tonight and send my sympathies to his family. My next question is completely separate from that, but I wanted to ask Edward, in light of the fact that we're heading into July, and you had mentioned that the next public meeting for the downtown proposal would be in July. Do you have any firm date or details yet on when that might be?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next phase of consultation is going to be a public consultation. It is sometime in mid-July. I don't have a date firmed up just yet. We're still looking at venues and dates, but I would anticipate it to be in the second or third week of July. That will consist of both a online public consultation where we'll have the various drawings, various schematics shown on the website, and an opportunity for people, the general public, and interested parties to provide us feedback. And we'll also have a public information center where people can drop in and view the various boards and have a conversation with staff.
Wonderful. That's great news. When that's announced, I assume that'll be like a media release with Eric and the team, so we're all aware and can share with our networks. And so to confirm, there will be a virtual option for folks I think that's a great way to make sure that's accessible to everyone.
Yes, the virtual option will be through our Let's Talk website.
Okay, so you'll be streaming it live like a council meeting? Like a live
No,
stream?
we won't be streaming as a council meeting. It is a drop-in public information center, so there will not be an online version.
Okay, I apologize. I thought there won't be any accessible options for folks to attend?
The Let's Talk page will have all the information that we have online, and there will be comment sheets and a way to provide input. But the Public Information Center is a drop-in center. We'll have a bunch of boards there and we'll have staff there, but we're not giving a presentation, so there would be no way to us actually have an online video of that sort of event.
Okay, well, in light of our discussions about accessibility, I'm wondering, I won't pursue that tonight, but I would like us to reconsider how that might be presented to ensure that folks who aren't able to attend in person can have that type of accessibility to it. But maybe we can address that at a later date in the interest of time. Last but not least, Mr. Chair, this is my final question. And this is in light, I was hoping we might have a different forum for this, but since this is the only council meeting we're having for the next little while, we did receive an email from the financial team the other day discussing our proposed tax rates for 2025. So in the interest of transparency, I wanted to perhaps get Gord's feedback on what our next steps would be. You had mentioned, Gord, you sent the email, so I'm just directing this to you as the financial wizard of our organization. You had mentioned in your email that council approved a 5.53% tax increase for 2024, an 8.18% increase in 2025, a 7.7 increase in 2026, and 7.3 increase in 2027. However, we've already had budget implications this year that we've approved during regular council meetings that will have an effect on the 2025 budget increase. And as we're going through this, you had suggested that any changes required would need to meet certain budget amendment criteria. You gave us a list of some of the items that we'd approved in open session that meant that we were actually currently projecting an approximately 9% increase. And to date, there has been an absence of any increased funding from upper levels. So you had requested that we consider an appropriate target for this year and to share that with the mayor and you and Steve. So I think in the interest of public engagement and transparency, I welcome the conversation on our budget, but I do feel that we need to make some informed decisions on what we send to you there was a deadline of this Friday about what we would cut, suggested cuts and service cuts to you. So perhaps we could have some clarity when we're all together, what's the best way to make these decisions in your opinion? Could you please give us a quick update of what you're looking for from us? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's best if I just start with laying out what the process is, just to remind everybody where we're at with the strong mayor powers that that was designated on Chatham-Kent last year and how that works. So, and particularly it's, anybody wants to look it up, it's Ontario Regulation 530-/22 was brought forward in the Strong Mayors Building Homes Act in 2022. So this regulation directs staff on how to operate with budgets going forward, and in particularly in section 7 of that, it's that the head of council shall, on or before February 1st of each year, prepare a proposed budget for the municipality that includes the estimate of sums required, I'll just say under the act, provide a proposed budget to each member of a council, and make the proposed budget available to public. Now that sounds a lot of work on the mayor. My finance team is still in charge of, through the mayor, of working with EMT and developing a budget over the summer. But the mayor, we used to come to council about a target report and have these discussions with council. The way it works going forward under this act is that the mayor is to direct EMT on what his or her idea would be of a budget proposal, and what a target for EMT to look at over the summer as we're preparing our budget, what we should be looking at. Yes, council has already in principle approved a 8.18% increase for next year. However, also on Monday nights, council has also authorized the expenditures that now raise it above 9%. So it's basically an ask by the mayor through me to council on, is there anything in particular else that you'd like staff to look at through the summer? Any ideas for savings or any idea for service level changes that you'd like us to look into in particular? Otherwise, EMT will do their best to bring a responsible budget 2025 update in the fall. It's not the full budget process as it was in the past, because we are also, in addition to the strong mayor powers, we're also in a multi-year budget our first multi-year budget in Chatham-Kent. So we've already gone through the fine details and the thousands of lines of the budget when we came up with the 8.18. We don't have to go over all that again. It's just what has changed. And I guess I'll leave it at that. It's just a request for information.
Michael, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'm going to ask Emily to come up. I think Mr. Quinton did a good job explaining sort of the financial part of it, but I just want to clear up any confusion about the mayor has been very clear that he's not accepting the strong mayor powers, but there are some pieces in legislation like this piece that can't be delegated. You might recall we gave you a report on that, but maybe Emily can give you a bit more detail about that just to make it clear, because I know that's confusing to some people.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Mr. Dubin is correct, and frankly, even for me, it's hard to keep track of some of this because there's a lot that has changed, much of which there's discretion on mayors who have these designated powers, whether or not they want to elect to use them. But some of it there is no discretion to it, and so just in October of 2023, subsequent to our mayor, recognizing that Chatham-Kent did not wish to assume these powers voluntarily, the ministry passed amendments to the regulation to impose them upon Chatham-Kent. So we're in that list on the regulation. You can find it. And so what that means, if you look through the legislation, is there are aspects, and one of the aspects is the financial implications of the changes to the legislation that have been imposed upon Chatham-Kent. And that has resulted in a big change to our budget process. And so I think there will be some growing pains as we navigate this new process. And I think my understanding is the ask to council is because the budget gets prepared certainly by administration, but presented through the mayor. The ask is to council members through the mayor to provide the type of feedback, food for thought for our financial team to take away through the summer, areas of focus, areas of interest, areas of significance, reflecting back on decisions that have been made over the previous year. So I think that has changed in the sense that this is mandatory now. The budget is presented by the mayor, and so it kind of creates an interesting and new dynamic for financial services to solicit information on the front end from council, so that when finance comes back in the fall, you have some sense of what to anticipate. So I think that is my understanding of sort of the ask that has been put to you, and that's a reflection of changes to legislation that have sort of modified the process, our typical process over last year.
Thank you, Emily, and through the mayor. So just, I know a couple of you have expressed concerns. Well, when is the public process going to take place? There will still be a public process. That part hasn't changed. So later on in the fall, there'll still be, budget meetings, and the public will be invited. I think, not to speak for Mr. Quinton, he's a grown man, can speak for himself, but I think the intent here was to just get some feedback from members of council, so that if the mayor wants to consider that and ask questions of administration, what is the implications of this idea that came forward from Councillor Sakachi? We need time to do that. And so that was the intent of the email, was to simply get some ideas from you. We did get some back. I don't know how serious all of them were, but we did get some back, and we'll certainly, and we'll certainly look at those if the mayor asks us to, and so this is just to put us in a position so that we're better prepared, and we're not rushing at the last minute. If you have no ideas, that's fine. If you do have any ideas, then please present them pursuant to the request from Mr. Quinton.
Sorry, I just want to add to that as well, that I guess this has been kind of tossed on me, and it's coming from me. It's the normal process. It's coming from administration. It has to technically come through me. But the one thing I've said is, go find more savings. So that's what they're going to be doing over the summer, but they're looking to councillors as well to say any suggestions, but going back and saying the increase right now is unacceptable, let's go find ways to reduce it. So that's the process that we're going to go through, and we want all of council to be supporting. I'm not coming saying this is it. No, I'm doing by legislation what I have to do, but this is going to be a council decision. This isn't mine. So Councillor Juvenile?
Thank you, Mayor. This is kind of a little off topic, but we keep on saying that the municipality of Chatham-Kent has been designated to be a strong mayor power.
Can we,
But just a second, but it's clear, I think it's
Okay.
misleading because 4 other municipalities declined the strong mayor powers and we accepted them. So I just want people to know that they weren't imposed on us, we accepted them, the strong mayor powers. So that's
Okay.
it, because it's being portrayed wrong, so I don't like, I just like clarity and transparency. So that's what I wanted to say, thank you.
Councillor Story, is there anything else that you had along those lines?
No, I appreciate that clarification, Mr. Mayor. I think so. You're looking to us. I think it's going to be a challenge. We're a pretty lean machine as it is, but so by this Friday, you would like councilors to submit ideas. I mean, it was referenced as service cuts in the email, which I think gives all of us a little bit of the willies, but that is what you're looking for by Friday, is suggestions from council to service cuts to get that 9% down as low as we can. Is that correct?
Yeah, essentially, that is it. Like, the executive management team always is looking for efficiencies. Like, I'll state that there always is ideas and technology changes and efficiency changes that you wouldn't know about that are going to come forward in the final budget project. But if there is any particular area that you'd like us to draw more attention to, that's what we're looking for.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the clarification.
Councillor B. McGregor, you had a question related to what we're talking about.
Yeah, just actually more of a comment. I know chairing the budget process a number of times, well, it looked a little different receiving that via email. The practice was annually we would make a motion sometime in the spring with the target, and typically during that discussion would make mention of the challenge in quickly getting together information if significant large motions were made during the budget process. So typically, if someone was interested in a reduction of X service, bringing that up on the first Tuesday night of budget, you're probably not going to get a very good answer by the Wednesday night. So if, there was sort of large scale service reviews or significant changes in service levels, having those in advance was always the preference in the budget process. Didn't always happen that way, but certainly that was typically the request through that motion that would have been made in the spring normally that we don't have to do anymore.
Okay, Councillor Story, you're done?
I totally support that, Councilor McGregor. I think the only question was, this seemed also a condensed timeline, and we want to make sure we're making all those decisions in an informed way, but I totally get that, and I would love to have that as much time as we can, so I respect that. Thank you.
Councillor Doyle, followed by Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say there's 14 minutes and 51 seconds left in the second period. It's 1-1. Go Oilers.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. The Federation of Canadian Municipalities is a national advocacy organization made up of elected officials from more than 2,100 municipalities of all sizes across Canada. They represent more than 92% of all Canadians, and as part of that work, the municipal leaders from across Canada assemble each year to set policy on key issues. FCM advocates for municipalities to be sure that their citizens' needs are reflected in federal policies and programs. Our very own Councillor Story was re-elected for a second term on the FCM Board of Directors as part of the Ontario Caucus. So I just wanted to extend congratulations around the horseshoe to her for that.
Okay, anything else? Councillor Crew?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Last week, we saw the changing of command. Chief Khan retired, and I'm sure, well, he retired, but I'm sure he's going to keep busy. But we do have a new chief of police, Chief Kirk Early, so I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome Chief Early to our being a chief, and I also want to thank Chief Khan for his 9 years of service as chief of Chatham-Kent. So thank you.
Okay, we'll move into reading of the bylaws. Councillor Hall and Councillor Harrigan, can I get you move the...
So moved.
And seconded.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Councillor C. McGregor, Councillor B. McGregor, third and final reading.
I'll move it.
Seconded.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. We'll go to closing, and Councillor Doyle, you said you wanted to put a motion to move that we go till 10:30 tonight?
Something like that.
All right, Councillor Crew and then Councillor Doyle, have you final wrap it up for us.
I move that Chatham-Kent Council adjourn to its next meeting to be held Monday, July 15th, 2024, and that Chatham-Kent Council authorize itself to meet in closed session that day to discuss any matters permitted by the Municipal Act. I so move.
I so second. Let's go watch some hockey.
Anyone opposed? This motion carries.